I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's March 15, 2016, and we're in the open session for our regular meeting of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. Roll call.
Director Ianson?
Here.
Director Solano?
Here.
Director Colley? Present. Director Bernstein?
Present.
I'd like to note that Director Carpenter is not here.
Okay, thank you. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, reportable actions for our closed session. We have none. Public comment number 2. Are there all these people here and there's no public comment? You got some people outside, or would anyone like to make a public comment outside?
Anybody want to make a public comment?
Steve, you're
I was told that the Menlo Park firefighters' benevolent activities report, they have nothing to report. Is that true?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Next, we're going to presentations. Commendation for Spencer Hope. I can't jump over the table. I don't know. If you could stand over here, okay, and board members, if you could join us up here, because we have a few here we're going to do. Chuck?
Can you stand behind you?
Well, I don't want to.
No,
You're
fine.
Okay. Whereas Spencer Hope has been employed with Sports House for over a year as a special events coordinator, and whereas on January 28, 2016, a patient collapsed during the game and Spencer was there to assist the patient within 22 seconds, and whereas the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office stated that Spencer performed textbook CPR, cardiac pulmonary resuscitation, and that without that CPR, the patient most likely would have died, and whereas without Spencer's clear thinking and quick actions, bridging the gap between the patient's collapse and the Menlo Park Fire Protection District's paramedics arriving, the patient probably would not have survived. Now, therefore, I, Robert J. Solano, President of the Board of Directors of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, do hereby honor and recognize Spencer Hope. In witness thereof, I hereby set my hand the 15th day of March in the year 2016, and congratulations. Very nice, thanks. Next one.
Director Solano? George, they would say something.
Oh,
May I say a couple words?
sure, come on up.
I'm George Millen, EMS coordinator here at Menlo Park Fire District. I just wanted to take a moment to say a little bit about what happened, and I'm not going to get real specific about it. But the bottom line, what you people will be doing here tonight with the agendas, what these guys are going to be doing when the bell goes off, what the chiefs are going to be doing all day long in all the meetings that they go to, the bottom line is saving lives, right? And the bottom line is how can we save lives? When I contacted the patient a couple weeks after, he said, "Oh, you guys were great. I owe the firefighters and the paramedics my life. It was wonderful. I'm so appreciative." I said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, but hold on. In this instance, it wasn't necessarily our paramedics that saved your life. It was this guy right here. It was Spencer. Guy was working there, went over real quickly, performed CPR, and kept him alive until our paramedics could get there." So with that said, he is the bottom line. And back 100 years ago when I was going through school for my fire science stuff, one of the instructors said, you know, the best way we can support people is have a firefighter at every house. Every house in the district have a firefighter right there to take care of things. Well, you know, as you guys know, you can't do that. So we do the best we can, but what we can do is focus on programs like hands-only CPR. Right now, every single student at MA High School has learned hands-only CPR. Are there 1,000 kids there? I don't know, but there's 1,000 people in our district right now, at least, that know what Spencer knows. Carol Parker is doing a hands-only CPR program, and I hope the board and the chiefs and the administration support that 100%, because that's the way of getting that medical person close to the call as soon as possible. And I challenge everybody in this room to take a CPR class and know what it's all about. So, lastly, thank you very much. You attained our bottom line. You are why we are here. Thank you very much.
I had a quick question for Spencer. How is it that you know CPR?
I learned it while I was working at the YMCA.
It was required?
Yes.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Next we have Serafina Casey. Virginia, would you come up here with me, since this was a program that you had worked on for, gosh, over a year? Huh?
Really,
Okay. All right. Whereas Serafina is a sophomore at Middle Atherton High School and started her Girl Scout Service Award project in 2014 during her freshman year at Middle Atherton High School, and whereas the national survival rate of sudden cardiac arrest is 10.4%, and in the United States, 57% of adults are trained in pulmonary resuscitation, with only 11%, I got that right this time, 11% actually using it. And whereas Serafina's Silver Award project was to enable the Pulse Point smartphone app to be activated in San Mateo County, providing CPR trained citizen responders with a map of the nearest public automated external defibrillators. And whereas, in 2014-2015, Serafina built a coalition with the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, the San Mateo County Fire Chiefs Association, the San Mateo County Emergency Medical Services Agency, San Mateo County Public Safety Communications, American Medical Response, Fire EMS Joint Powers Act Authority, Peninsula Healthcare District, Red Cross Clubs, and the Sequoia Healthcare District to help fund and implement Pulse Point in San Mateo County. This is the second award presentation, because she was also awarded at the Board of Supervisors meeting, where Virginia and myself were present. So, whereas on February 23rd, the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors proclaimed February as American Heart Month in San Mateo County, with Serafina accepting a proclamation on behalf of all San Mateo County residents. Whereas on February 23rd, 2016, Pulse Point was officially launched throughout San Mateo County. Now therefore I, Robert J. Solano, President of the Board of Directors of Menlo Park Fire Protection District, do hereby honor and recognize Serafina Casey. In witness of my signature, Virginia, since it was part of your original program, could you please present her?
Thank you, Serafina. It's an honor to present this to you on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and Chief Chaplain Bowman. This app helps people like Spencer, right, to be able to react and save lives. And we're so proud that Serafina is part of making this happen. And it took a lot of hard work with a lot of agencies, and with the support of the chief, the board of supervisors, I mean, this coalition that she built, and obviously her parents, and especially her father. You know, this was her Girl Scout Silver Award project, and we couldn't be prouder to present this to you. And just so happy that the Pulse Point app is now in San Mateo County. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you again. Thank you. Chuck?
Congratulations.
congratulations. Oh.
She just had a few words to say, because this has been like an over 1 year project that actually started when I was vice president of this board and lasted through the presidency and actually came to fruition now, so.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to say that I am very honored to be here, and I want to thank the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors for the support they have provided. PulsePoint is a free smartphone app. The app will provide an instant alert through our county 911 system to those nearby a victim of sudden cardiac arrest, so they can start CPR in the critical life-saving minutes before an EMS team arrives. PulsePoint can direct citizen responders to nearby AEDs, strengthening the chain of survival. I am proud to have worked with so many dedicated adults who accepted me as part of this team. I'd like to thank Chief Harold Chapelhauman and my Girl Scout leader Renee Hafiz, and especially Virginia, who's been with me from the start, and I very much appreciate her help and guidance, as well as all of her enthusiasm and the time she's put in to this. At my very first meeting about PulsePoint, the one that set me on a path to be part of this team was with Fire Chief Harold Chapelhauman. He was so enthusiastic about the Girl Scouts working on this project, and he told us PulsePoint will definitely save lives. I believe Chief Harold is right, and I think that PulsePoint will make the difference between life and death for some of the citizens in this county. An important step has been taken with PulsePoint, and the work for our team goes on. I hope everyone here will help get the word out to drive many of our residents to start using PulsePoint. We need to continue the important work of CPR training programs, and I ask all of you who come across an AED in our county to use the PulsePoint AED app on your smartphone to capture its location for our county database. Thank you.
Okay, you think we're done, but we're not. We have one more. Steve Strong. Thank you. You look kind of like a firefighter. Okay. Whereas on November 20th, 2015, Steve Strom was nominated as Firehouse Magazine's Emergency Vehicle Technician of the Year. And whereas Steve Strom has been an integral part of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District since 1997. And whereas Steve Strom is one of the most qualified mechanics in the region and has a strong reputation with apparatus manufacturers and fellow mechanics and fellow firefighters and fellow board members. I added that myself.
Thank you.
Whereas Steve Strom is an ASE Master Technician certified in automotive, diesel engines, and truck equipment, has completed a certification track for mechanics with the California State Fire Marshal's Office, and is a certified emergency vehicle technician for aerial equipment. And whereas Steve Strom is the fleet supervisor for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and the FEMA California Urban Search and Rescue Task Force 3, and manages and maintains over 75 steering vehicles in his primary function. That's pretty amazing. I mean, 75 vehicles all by himself.
Well, I got Rudy
Well, Rudy
and I
too.
together.
Okay,
Do it.
all right. Where was I? Oh, over here. Okay,
Yes.
there was. Okay. Yeah. Steve Strom is also responsible for the entire fleet of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Water Rescue Team, which includes 2 jet skis, 4 inflatable rescue boats, 1 rigged hull inflatable boat, and one of the only 2 fire rescue airboats on the West Coast. Well, being from Florida, how many people here have been on an airboat? Well, of course, firefighters. I mean, we're talking. Steve Strom is responsible for managing student fire mechanic cadets from the College of San Mateo Fire Technology Program. Now, therefore, I, Robert J. Solano, President of the Board of Directors of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, do hereby honor and recognize Steve Strom. talk about Rudy since you don't
Yes.
do this all by yourself?
No, I don't do this by myself, but these guys break them and we fix them.
We're all good at our jobs.
Yes,
You're welcome.
thank you. He is correct. They are very good at it. I want to say thank you to John Werdenshire and the other guy.
Andrew Murtaugh.
Thank you, Andrew Murtaugh, for sending in my name for nomination. I am, it doesn't say it in here, but I'm third place in the nation, but I'm first place in California, so.
But
what
you're
the heck.
first place in our hearts.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
That's my feeling.
Thank you.
Hold still.
Fantastic.
Right behind you.
Glad you got to see me.
I'm gonna catch up a little bit here.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Congratulations, good job.
Okay, we're gonna move items on the regular agenda. Items 11.
Good job.
Wait a minute. Where's everybody going? What? Where's everybody going?
Cake and ice cream in the kitchen.
Thank you very much. Now we're back to business.
Fun stuff's over,
Priority.
Ben? You gonna let that happen? Okay. I'm telling you, everybody's going.
Closer to the doors, too.
We're gonna be moving items 11 and 17 to the front here before the chief's report. So items 11 and 17. Okay, so we're going to items 11. Consider and approve a resolution accepting Frank Fione's appeal of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors determination to deny his industrial disability retirement and refer to the hearing of appeal to an administrative law judge. Our background, Gina, want to give us some type of background?
Sure. So Frank Frione has applied for an industrial disability retirement. The board, as you know, previously considered his application and in the absence of documentation at the time, denied it. Mr. Frione has appealed that decision, and so what is before the board this evening is the decision of whether, first of all, whether to accept the appeal, meaning that the board will consider it, it has been properly filed, and secondly, whether to, assuming you do accept the appeal, whether to hear the appeal and consider the evidence yourselves as a board, or to refer the matter to an administrative law judge for consideration of all evidence and recommended findings and determination of that appeal.
All right, well, let's do the first is, do I have a motion to approve his appeal?
So moved.
I'll second it. Discussion? Chuck?
I just wonder if you could tell us the whole procedure from beginning to end. So there's an appeal of the original decision. I understand if this, would we consider his appeal tonight, or would this be put on a future agenda?
It would be on a future agenda. So what is before the board this evening is simply the procedural question of whether to move forward with this matter, and if so, to calendar it for a future date for a hearing and consideration of the evidence before this body, or to refer it to an administrative law judge, obviously to be chosen, and have that calendared at a future date for hearing. If you choose the latter course and refer it to an ALJ, the ALJ would then present you with written findings and recommendations, which would then come back to the board for final disposition. So the board retains final authority, decision-making authority on this matter.
So the administrative law judge's opinion would have the weight of a recommendation or a point of view or a perspective, but it wouldn't in any way be binding, it wouldn't in any way be published or anything like that. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct. It would come back to the board for final disposition.
And then if a final decision were made, would that be appealable also?
I believe that would be final and binding.
Thank you.
Virginia?
Just a quick question, Gina. So, for the ALJ that judge looks at, is what is factored in?
So
Where does the judge get the information and what is factored into that decision-making process for a recommendation?
So the appellant would have the opportunity to present whatever documentation he believes is relevant. He can present argument, ideally, medical documentation, which I believe is available, and whatever other material, he wished to submit. The department would also have an opportunity to submit any matter it felt was relevant, and then the ALJ would be charged with analyzing that material under the standard for disability retirement, which is that there is sufficient medical and other information to show that he is disabled and that it was caused by, that it was work-related.
Okay, and just to, sorry,
No, go ahead.
so just so that I'm clear, if we accept the appeal, then we would have to make another motion to have the hearing.
For clarification, that's okay, you can continue on the motion that's on the table, but the way the draft resolution is written, it's a resolution accepting the appeal and referring it to an ALJ. So of course, if the board determines to take a different action, you can vote on that.
We can amend it.
Sure,
That's why I
certainly.
broke it up into two.
Absolutely, so I would recommend you continue with 2, and then at the end, you can make a final motion, if this is your determination, or
Fine,
whatever the
okay,
determination
okay.
is.
All right, that's why I made it into two.
Great.
Okay. Sorry.
No, I was just trying to understand that, because to me, it was like an and, so it seemed like it should have been one motion.
Well, that's why I broke it up, because I wanted more discussion on that.
Oh, well, would you take an amendment then? I made an amendment to make it,
Let me just hear from Rex.
oh, okay.
And then-
To amend the current motion to do the appeal and have the appeal heard by an ALJ.
See, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, and that's why I want to
Well,
hear the
that's why-
discussion. Okay, that's fine.
Well, the motion that's on the table now is to approve the appeal.
The appeal, okay, that's fine.
That's why I want to leave it
Okay.
in two separate discussions. Go ahead, Rex.
So it's just to approve the appeal, but it's not to send it to an ALJ.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Is that-
the motion was to accept the appeal.
Right.
I'm in favor of accepting the appeal, I just, okay.
All right. Go
Okay,
ahead. Yep, go ahead, Joe.
Is there a statutory standard by which the board would consider an appeal?
It would be the same standard that the ALJ would be applying, that is whether there is sufficient evidence to support the finding that the appellant is disabled, A, and B, assuming that there is a disability that precludes him from working, that it was work-related.
Well, that's the judgment, that's of the content. I'm asking about the procedure to accept the appeal.
Oh.
Is there a standard for, on what basis? In other words, does it have to involve an error? Does it have to involve something of that sort?
Right, so there's no requirement that there be any particular error articulated in the prior communication to the appellant. He was instructed that he just had a particular time frame, I believe it was 30 days, to appeal the board's decision, and he submitted his request for an appeal within that time frame. So there are no other legal hurdles that he would have to overcome in order for the board to proceed.
Or for the board to vote one way or the other?
Correct.
Thank you.
I have some questions.
Okay, I hope I can
Are you ready?
answer.
As to the documentation, do we find that we have sufficient medical documentation to go forward? Because I remember the first time it was brought to the board, there was missing some documentation that I know I brought up the question, and I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't any medical documentation that was presented the first time. So I just want to make sure that we're approving this appeal, that the proper documentation as to the medical findings are in the package.
My understanding is that the appellant's counsel has submitted and also referred to in communication medical documentation that does now exist that was not in existence when the board initially heard the request for an IDR.
Okay, great, okay. And then I have two more. Chuck, I'm kind of late. I'm kind of like taking your lead. Sometimes I'll ask one, but I want to be sure I get all three. Okay.
I'm all done.
Oh, all right. Okay. The ALJ, the administrative law judge, has that been used in previous administrative matters like this?
Whether, I don't know if this district has, but
Well,
it is
no,
part
I'll
of.
talk about other districts other than ourselves.
So my understanding from PERS is that that is part of a normal procedure. It is part of what they have recommended for the handling of an appeal such as this, although the ultimate determination rests with the board.
Okay, so it still rests with us.
Absolutely.
The problem, as I had the first time, is the second, is now, is knowing the potential annuitant that's going to go forward with the disability, and forwarding it to an administrative law judge when ultimately we're going to have the final vote, even after the administrative law judge recommendation, which is no way binding as to what our decision's going to be made. Right? So you would think it would be, what is staff's recommendation using the administrative law judge?
What's in here? They actually recommend that we accept the appeal and that the board refer to the appeal hearing to an.
I want to hear from our counsel. I see what's written.
I know.
I just want to
You asked what
have
staff
them,
was recommending.
have them tell me here.
In my own words, the advantage of having of referring the matter to an ALJ is you would be referring the matter to someone with experience in considering evidence and analyzing it under a legal standard and presenting a reasoned analysis for a recommendation one way or another. So that person would be doing the work of taking the evidence, sifting through it, deciding what was relevant, what was not relevant, and whether that evidence met the legal standard under which this determination must be made. Obviously, then the board would have to apply its own analysis and judgment to that, but you would have a framework from someone who is a neutral third party, unconnected with any member of this department, and is trained in making determinations such as this.
What would be their education, training, and experience as an administrative law judge that would hear, or how would that individual be chosen?
You would most likely go through the Office of Administrative Services. Was that the
General Services.
Sorry, the Office of Administrative Hearing and General Services. It's a state agency that has ALJs that they refer matters to. As far as the specific background and training of any given administrative law judge, I could not speak to that.
Like, would they be trained in disability pensions, or would they have that type of legal background, or would it be? Because I know dealing with some mediators, sometimes just because they're lawyers doesn't necessarily mean that they have the expertise or the knowledge relative to. I can see where they can do the research, but I would want a little bit more. If I'm going to send this out to administrative law judge, I want someone that has a background in pensions and that type of administrative law, where I don't think. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, and then that's why I asked how is this information gathered and.
Well, I know it's going to be done properly, because whatever their background is, I'm sure that they can present those things. But I'm concerned with the aspect of what their actual knowledge and experience will be relative to that. Or how they chose them, or do we choose them, or is it kind of like the way the public defenders are chosen, that they're on a wheel, and, their number comes up and you're the administrative law judge, because I don't want to spend money for that.
Understood. I know that they all
Well,
have,
taxpayers' money.
I know that they all have legal training, whether they have specific background in pension determinations. I'd have to defer that question to staff if, I don't know if you
They're
have
the
more information.
they're the recommended body by CalPERS. CalPERS refers all of their cases that are heard through this office. So they would have experience presumably in this.
So we would send this recommendation to CalPERS and then they would assign someone?
No. CalPERS is recommended to us because we have the appeal. This is the process to follow.
So it's the same body of ALJs that CalPERS sends its hearings to. So for the non-public safety hearings, those PERS handles itself, but the ALJs that it uses come from that same pool that they are referring us to. Did I get that right?
So it's likely that these ALJ judges have dealt with PERS cases.
Yeah. Because CalPERS uses this pool
It's
to
just
pick their
exactly.
ALJ whenever there's this type of a hearing.
How often does this happen? I mean, does somebody that retires and puts in for disability retirement go to a hearing like this?
I don't know. I don't know if that is it is the process that PERS recommended, but I don't know how often it occurs. I just don't have data on that.
Rob, I do have a question.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I'd asked you before what the final process was here and whether this decision that we would make again was appealable. But as I understand, I mean, from my experience, virtually all decisions from administrative law judges can be appealed to Superior Court. I assume that would be true here as well. Is that correct?
No, so the administrative law judge's decision would then go to the board, and the board's decision would be final. Now, there's always an avenue for a collateral attack in terms of, in the vehicle of a writ of mandamus, so I suppose there could be what they call it, a collateral challenge to your decision, but the standards for that are narrow.
I see. And does the procedure that we follow here, whether we make the decision or whether we rely on an ALJ to advise us first, would that in any way impact the likely success of a Superior Court challenge?
I suppose it could if the ground for the writ petition were some administrative irregularity or some, having an ALJ who is, neutral and unknown to all the parties could potentially theoretically provide some degree of shield, but that's speaking very, very hypothetically. I'm having a hard time imagining how exactly that would play out. So it's, I'm sorry to be so tenuous with my answer.
I'm going to go around again. Chuck, do you have anything else?
Well, maybe,
I still have some more questions.
We started discussing the judgment. We really shouldn't be discussing the judge right now because that's not what we're voting on. We're just voting whether to accept the appeal, if I understand correctly.
Right.
And then the procedure we will follow is going to be
All right,
a
well,
second discussion.
let's do that. So are we done with the discussion relative to
The appeal.
hearing the appeal? Okay, I have a second, and let's get a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Okay, so that's one part. And next will be, should we make our decision and have our staff document and review the documents relative to what will be presented to the administrative law judge, or do we at a later date make the final determination?
Well, so what's the motion then? We're gonna refer this to the hearing?
It's either referred
Of the
to the
appeal.
administrative law judge
Right.
or ourselves make the final determination.
You mean without a hearing?
Without it.
Because either way, we're gonna have the final determination.
Right,
So
but
So
All right, well, let's do the administrative law judge.
first, and have
Right.
that discussion and make
Right.
that motion,
Okay.
I'll make the
Okay.
motion to start the discussion,
There you go.
to refer it to the administrative law judge.
And I'll second.
Now,
Okay.
discussion.
Now we'll do this discussion. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, I wondered if you could give us an estimate of the cost of this. As I understand that the cost is near $200 an hour for this. Do we have any idea how much time this would take?
I will defer to staff on what the per hour cost or estimated costs are. My best estimate as far as the length of time would be that a hearing could be completed in one day, or even potentially, depending on whether, and this is a decision for another time, whether the department would put on any evidence, but it could potentially be submitted on documentation alone, and then it would require, possibly a day or a day and a half worth of work for the ALJ to analyze that documentation and generate a decision. That would be my best estimate.
Meaning it might be 3 days in total, something of that sort?
I would think that would
So
be
if it were
my
that's
best
24 hours times, I know it's a little less than $200, but, so we're talking about less than $8,000 in fees.
Exactly.
72 hours.
Sorry? 180 per hour.
Okay, thank you.
Virginia?
No, I just want to know, I want to hear why Rex doesn't want an ALJ. Because because I want to hear all views, that's
Well, Rex, go ahead.
I kind of look at it as that you turned down the first one, the first disability retirement, because he didn't have paperwork. So now he has paperwork, and I would assume that the paperwork comes from a medical authority. It's evaluated him, right? So if we have the staff, and you look at it, and you look at that, the paperwork that was in there, the doctor either makes a recommendation that they're fit for disability, or they're fit for disability retirement, or they're not. Either they're good to go, or they have a disability. So I'm thinking, why do I want to take that, and the paperwork that he submits, and send that to administrative law judge without ever looking at it here?
You mean first?
Yeah.
Because we would get to see the paperwork. Okay, okay, that's helpful, Rex. So just to piggyback on what you're saying, so let's send it, that we don't send it to an ALJ. And we make a final determination. Is that appealable? Possibly go to an ALJ hearing?
No,
Or is
so
that just anything at the end, after the appeal, whatever decision is made is a final decision?
whatever decision this board makes, whether you hear the evidence yourselves or
Or an ALJ.
after an ALJ makes a recommendation, would be final and binding, except that it could be subject to a collateral challenge through the writ process.
Right, okay.
Good. I have a few more, questions.
Okay, I hope I have a few more answers.
If we should not do the administrative law judge, are we going to be able to review the medical documentation before we provide a decision, or is it under HIPCA? Can we look through all that?
So
Or
it
what
would-
documents do we have access to?
You would be entitled to review whatever documentation the applicant submits. And for medical privacy reasons, you would probably be advised to discuss the evidence in closed session.
He would provide a waiver for us to review those. right?
Absolutely, by submitting it, he is waiving any medical privacy rights that he would otherwise have. And so that would be, obviously you couldn't make a determination without considering that information, nor could an ALJ, because part of the determination is whether he can show by competent medical evidence that he is unable to do his usual and customary job and that it was caused by a work-related
Okay,
issue.
so it's kind of like we would make our own rules relative to, like, we would get a staff report from the chief and his staff as to what their recommendation is, right? Am I correct?
You could do that, you could direct
And
the
then
staff.
direct the staff in order to review the documentation and make sure it's in order, right? And then for us to have the final say, you know, administrative law judge is probably a good idea to keep us from being biased because we all know Frank. But I kind of think it's passing the buck. I mean, I can make the determination. Passing the buck. I think we can make the determination ourselves as to, you know, the medical evidence that would be presented. Well, I can only speak for myself. I think I could probably do a better job than administrative law judge can.
So here's the, and I'm not disagreeing with you and Rex, and I don't even know, I've got to think this through. But when we had the first discussion, we didn't have a quorum to vote on this. And that's the problem I have. How is that going to be any different? At least the information, if it goes through an ALJ, will go through a neutral party to give a recommendation so that kind of, so it would be, we would not feel conflicted. I mean, I get what y'all are saying, but I look back to the original situation where Peter had to, otherwise we would not have had a quorum to even vote on this. So that's the problem I'm wrestling with, because Peter actually had to say, well, because this is an emergency, well, not he didn't use the word emergency, but we didn't have a quorum to vote, he felt compelled to vote. And so I don't want us to be in a situation like that again where we don't have a quorum. When this is clearly a matter that's of interest to a longtime employee who has, you know, provided a great service. So that, I'm just throwing it out there.
Well noted, for you, well noted. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I'm going to argue on behalf of the motion. I'm one of those people that I don't like to spend money unnecessarily and so forth. But in the materials that we reviewed the first time around, I think there were issues related, I think we all have the notion that Frank was, to some extent, whatever, damaged by his involvement in certain activities. The question is, did they rise to the level of justifying a medical disability? And I think these things relate to both evaluating the medical evidence, but also evaluating the legal precedents that have, where people have decided whether these met the criteria. That Frank was able to work for the district, he did not have to leave his employment because of these things. That's not to say he wasn't damaged, but what is the standard? And I don't think any of us know what the standard is to say, okay, that really does qualify or does not qualify. And we've got two interests. We've got the interest of the public who indirectly and at some point would be paying the cost of this, and then we have the interest of a long-time loyal firefighter in the district. And I think that to get a professional's view of that, I think has value. And I could go either way on it, but I think it would be worth not, I don't think we should force the staff to make what is both a medical and a legal decision. I think this is something that we could at least get the advice of an outside person who looks at these matters.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Brad?
I don't know, I just think that if you read through what the doctors have recommended, they'll pretty much tell you whether he's disabled or he's not.
Right, but at the end of the day, we still have to vote on it. And if we
Because
don't have a quorum to vote, that's just as problematic as not having a resolution to this.
Well, we're not gonna vote on
No,
the
but
actual
at the
thing.
end of the day, we have to vote on whether or not Frank Frioni is gonna get these disability benefits.
You do have a quorum.
We have a quorum right now, just four of us.
We're not voting on the disability.
No, but I mean a quorum.
I'm talking about when we have, when the actual matter comes back, when we have to vote on whether or not we move forward with this, or how we move forward with this. How many of y'all are going to, it's the same question that we originally had, except with more information.
Oh, okay, right. Right. if you're provided the proper evidence or documentation relative to his disability claim, can you be objective? I know I can. If I've got the facts in front of me with the medical documentation, and I've got physicians that say that he's impaired in some way, and he was injured, and that's their determination, well, they're medical professionals.
But Rob, I don't think that's the whole thing. I don't think, it's also, does that merit a disability retirement, which is not, is he disabled? I think there is some disability, and I don't think anybody would argue with that. But does that merit a disability retirement? That's a legal question.
And that's going to be our final decision is going to be that.
But we don't even know what to look at as a
We don't know the legal
precedent.
standard. That's what, how do we know what standard to use to determine that? None of us, unless, I don't know something, none of us have that area of expertise.
Just remember tonight that you don't need to
I
be
know,
discussing
yeah.
this on the merits.
I know.
The legal standard will either be provided by the
Yeah, but
ALJ
it
or
will
to the
go
board.
to whether or not
Or
we
to be
want to
presented to
move
us,
this to the
right?
ALJ.
Okay.
Right now, that's the discussion,
That's just
Right.
the, yeah, we're just looking
not the
at that
merits.
decision.
This is a procedural
Well, I
question
gotta,
right now.
okay, well, I gotta say that I've got all the confidence in our legal team and our staff to make the determination relative, is this a medical disability? Is it the proper documentation presented to us and go to some administrative law judge that, okay, it'll be good that, you know, maybe he or she will be objective and not know Frank, but, you know, I feel I can make a determination and a decision that if the proper evidence is presented or the proper documentation. The first time I had an issue was because he applied for a medical disability, and I was asked if there was any medical evidence, and there wasn't any. So how could I vote on something? That's why I wanted to table it. But now we have sufficient medical evidence, right?
The sufficiency of the medical evidence is not something that has been assessed. That would be
Well,
up to the
right.
determination.
Well, that would be up
That's
to our staff and HR to do, but to see if it's relevant. And don't you, in workman's comp, don't you bring in like, isn't it like a panel of 3 or something that does an assessment, or
That's a separate
do we
process.
send him to like Kaiser in order to get assessed, or how does that work?
I would be quite comfortable talking about the actual findings of the medical documentation at this point. It's really a matter of whether or not you guys feel you can interpret the legal statute and make a determination on the validity of the documentation and the decision. I don't want to talk too much about what we've received to this point because I haven't had a chance to vet it with our attorneys.
We should have been ready for that.
So that,
So we still have,
You know what I mean?
staff report,
You
even
should have
if we
been
got
ready.
a
I mean,
recommendation,
we have an
right?
opinion, but the opinion needs to be based in legal fact, and that's
Okay,
our.
all right, well, I'm gonna put it right in your lap, okay? I am not voting for administrative law judge, okay? No. Don't pass the buck. I'm able to make the determination by looking at whatever's presented by him and the evaluation by your staff chief and by legal counsel.
Would it be helpful, I have a list of the criteria that would have to be, or the determinations that would have to be made.
Well, the motion is to use an administrative law judge, right?
Correct. Well, if in making that
That's the
decision,
motion.
you had a sense of what legal questions will have to be answered, that, would you find that useful?
Yes,
I would.
Okay.
I would.
So the determination must address, one, whether the member is substantially incapacitated, which is a term of art, the expected duration of the incapacity, whether the incapacity is industrial, what the nature of the primary disabling condition, and then the effective date of the retirement, assuming that there is a substantial work-related incapacity. And also, this is ancillary, whether there would be any potential third-party liability. So those are the legal questions that would be before you.
Right. But then we would rely on our legal staff in order to make a recommendation, correct?
what we could do would be to analyze the precedents and provide, a legal framework for you to make the ultimate factual determinations.
Right.
Along those same lines, does the board have the ability to say that if we passed it off to staff or HR, is there anything that prevents HR from saying, okay, I might want to get some outside counsel to help me with this, to make sure that I'm looking at it the right way and understand the language?
I don't know of anything that would prevent that, no.
Chuck, go ahead, I'm sorry.
How would the determination be made if there were a third party involvement, like, given that FEMA had mobilized this group? To what extent is the federal government potentially liable for this disability?
That is one of the legal questions that this board would have to take a look at when just considering this issue on the merits. Again, today obviously is only procedural, and so what would go into that analysis is not currently before you.
And do you expect that the administrative law judge would in fact address all those points that you have just read?
If that's what you charge the ALJ with doing, then yes, that's the ordinary set of questions that an ALJ who is making a recommendation on industrial disability retirement petition would be making.
And that actually was going to be my last question. So we would in effect instruct the judge on what we want from him. The board or her. The board would be doing, the staff.
Well, that's part of the ALJ's expertise, right? So they hear these types of matters and they apply the law that applies to these types of hearings. So I guess, to speak to what is the difference between what you would get from an ALJ and what you would get from legal counsel is, we can come in here and tell you, here are the legal standards, here are what, here's what PERS said in this case, and here's, what the statute says, but you would be the ones who have to put it all together and say, we're gonna make this factual finding, and we're going to apply the law in this way, and here's what we're gonna come out with. If you have an ALJ, they're actually doing that analysis, making those findings, and then saying, here's my recommendation for how you should come out on these ultimate questions.
Why can't you do that?
Because it is the province of the board to make the determinations.
If I've got an administrative law judge to make that determination, why can't I depend on my counsel to make that decision?
It is a different procedural stance, and quite honestly, an ALJ would have expertise that, however well versed we are as advocates in.
But an ALJ doesn't have any authority other than making a recommendation to us, correct?
The ALJ would have further in-depth
I'm just
experience
asking a
with
question.
this.
No, really, Jim.
Right. Would they have any authority?
None.
No, they would be, exactly, just
So
making
what
a
would be the
recommendation.
difference in the evaluation that the administrative law judge would do than your law firm would do? Maybe I'm not getting it,
Yeah.
but
I guess what I'm talking about is the distinction between experience in advising or, setting or giving a legal framework or even advocating on a petition like this versus experience in actually adjudicating it. We're not judges. So our experience goes to analyzing the law, giving you the framework, even, if we had to, in whatever forum, advocating for a particular outcome. The ALJ's experience is actually being judges of these contested matters and presenting exactly the type of recommendations to the board. Plus, they're cheaper. But that's for you to consider.
wait a second. I'm still on a roll.
Okay, go on, keep.
I just, maybe we need another law firm. I mean, I depend on, or our board depends on your expertise and your legal advice. And I don't see where an administrative law judge is going to provide us anything different. Other than the title of administrative law judge, and saying that either him or her are impartial. I don't believe that.
And that really is what it
I
comes
really
down
don't.
to, is the impartiality, is that you have somebody who is used to adjudicating rather than advising. And it is a slightly different function. It's not that we couldn't give you the parameters of the law. We could certainly do that.
So you don't want to provide us with a decision as administrative law judge? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't believe it would be our proper function to provide a decision for, a recommended decision for you.
No, but we would ask you for a recommendation if we decided not to go with the administrative law judge. In a staff report. And the chief staff would prepare a report with your assistance as legal counsel, correct?
That's,
And
yes,
then
you chose to hear it yourselves.
you would advise us whatever's under the law, and we still have to make the final decision.
Right, and it would be the province of the board to make factual conclusions. So that is not something that legal counsel would be.
Well, the administrative law judge can't make any factual conclusions, can they?
Yes.
They can.
Yes, that would be their, again, it's up to you whether to adopt them or not, but the ALJ would be initially making those findings.
I never liked civil law at all. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of used to 1, 2, 3, 4 elements and things like this. I mean, this is very, a lot of it's subjective, and it's a decision that I'm making, and Frank or another firefighter or another public safety employee, and this is a situation where not only Frank but many firefighters, including our chief, that went to ground zero and was somewhat impaired by going there and breathing in whatever those fumes were and stuff. And I feel that I just don't buy the administrative law judge thing. I really don't, Gina. I'm sorry. I have an issue with that. I have an issue with providing firefighters to ground zero and not properly supporting them. And if it's CalPERS that has to do it, or the federal government or whatever, they should be compensated, including our chief and whoever else worked 9/11. So, I would want, I just think the administrative law judge is a good way for me to pass the buck and say, go ahead, administrative law judge, give me a decision. But I think the people that are sitting at this table are the ones that are ultimately going to make the final decision. And I think it rests with us. And Virginia brings up a great point. Last time we did this, it's like, well, there's a conflict of interest, there's here, and I don't think I can make a decision. Well, yeah, that's an issue. But that administrative law judge is going to give us whatever facts and circumstances that she or she is going to make an evaluation. But the ultimate decision is still going to rest with us.
So I have a question. When we get the recommendation back from the administrative law judge, in what form will that be? Will it be substantiated by case law, or what? Or is
It would be a written decision explaining the basis for the conclusions.
Right.
And an explanation of how the administrative law judge got there, how they were.
I know I get that, but I mean, would it be like a mini brief?
It would read probably more like a judicial decision.
With case law?
Yes. And
Wait,
the
see, that would-
citation to
that would
the
be
to the statute.
Laura and Gina.
Yes, reference to the state law too.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Laura and Gina, the thing I would want to know, administrative law judge or not, is the impaired disability, okay, that doesn't have to be 100% with CalPERS, where the person cannot work at all in that capacity, or is another capacity with classification.
But again, this is getting into the
This is the
substance of the
substance.
claim.
You can't-
That, those are gonna be questions for the ALJ or for the board to determine. But right now, it's basically a question as to who do you want to do that work? Who do you want to do the analysis of the facts? Who do you want to do an analysis of the law? As Gina's explained, the decision lies with the board regardless, but it's thinking about laying all the groundwork beforehand. It's almost like it's a mini hearing, a mini trial. Do you want to sit and receive the evidence, or do you want the ALJ to sit and receive the evidence and then present the findings to you?
I'm going to do it. Rob, can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead, Joe.
I'm curious about, in terms of, I know there's kind of the case law that exists at the legal or court level, and then there's the case law that exists at the administrative law level. Would a law firm normally have access to the case precedents that are in the administrative law? I don't know what you would call it, but those precedent administrative law cases? Or is that kind of a library almost, and a database that's available only to specialists who work that?
So anything that you would find cited in a recommended decision and opinion is information that we would likely be able to have access to as well. So if there are, CalPERS decisions or opinion letters or, administrative materials of that nature, there are places where we can access those. Anything that has, in other words, an ALJ wouldn't be relying on precedent that was not generally available.
So what about this library of private decisions, which I think sometimes in administrative law decisions?
Right.
Do you have access to private decisions also?
Anything that could be used as precedent is something that we would have access to.
But sometimes these aren't allowed to be used as precedent, but they still exist and are referred to or something.
Are you referring to like an unpublished decision?
Unpublished decisions
Yeah,
or
we-
even private letters?
Yes, we would have access to that,
Okay.
but we would use it in the same way that an ALJ judge would. So if a decision is unpublished, you could use it as an example, but it's not legally binding precedent, if that answers your question.
Another perspective.
I guess I'm trying to make the point here that these administrative law judges have, I would say, more access or more ready access or have more experience probably dealing with a whole body of law.
Just to clarify, I would say they probably do have more experience,
Okay.
but not more access.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, okay. I know I sometimes tried to look up some of the sites that they would put in decisions, and I had trouble finding them in the normal sources that, say, a civilian would have, maybe through, Lexis or something like that, you have more access to
So
it.
are you ready to call the question, Chris? Oh, I thought you were.
But I guess I'm trying to make the point that I think this is a very specialized area. I think people do have the experience of dealing with a body of precedent that is not the norm, and that they have a narrower, administrative law judges have a narrower but more in-depth experience with using that information.
Applying the law. Or
Yes, but
applying-
even a specialized law, not just the law
Right, right.
like legislation, but law in terms of case law.
Okay. Rex? I can make, if you're writing, I can say the three things I'm gonna say, if you like, Rex.
Go ahead.
Okay, we've been banging this around here for, quite a while. You brought up three good things: reference, research, and gosh, our law firm should be able to do the research relative to what's precedent, what's not. different statutory aspects, I mean, you should be able to do that, I hope. A recommendation by staff and by HR as to what the facts and circumstances are of the case. Are those doctors real doctors? Are they going to make a determination that is it a debilitating injury? And staff will make that, and the final decision still rests with us. So.
Yeah, I get that, I'm just trying to see what,
I'm kind of, you know.
what the quality of the information, not even the quality, the fullest, I guess the most amount of information based on experience for us to even make that. I mean, I get what you're saying, I do, I'm still, that's why I'm just listening.
Okay. Rex?
Well, the flip side of it is that if you consider that staff time, and if they need help to make an outside consultant to help them understand and get through that, and then legal counsel takes a look at it, I mean, are we pretty much looking at the same amount? I mean,
Amount of money, you mean?
sure, but do we also look at the same, do we come to the same conclusion? Because then eventually it's gonna come back to us to say yes or no.
That's the way I see it, right?
So on the one hand, yeah, it's nice to handle it in-house, but on the other side, is the administrative law judge basically gonna do the same thing that we're gonna do in-house? And he comes back with an opinion that you either agree with or you don't agree with, and you make a determination off of that.
We're back around the table again.
Chuck, just as a point of clarification, we heard you say that it'd be approximately the same cost. If the staff heard it, it actually would be more expensive for staff to hear it because our legal costs are higher than the ALJ's hourly bill. But that's just a point of reference, it's not a
Well,
recommendation.
you know, sometimes you have to spend a little money because, you know, this is a 30-something year employee. Maybe they need a little bit more hands-on. I'm really not looking at dollars and cents here. I mean, if I did that, I think I'd be an idiot, okay? What I want is a fair evaluation of whatever was presented the second time, because the first time evidently we didn't get the whole picture. We didn't get the medical evidence to make a real determination. So I think this appeal is kind of, you know, I don't know what happened. Secondly, if I've got the proper documentation and the proper legal research and precedent that said to depend on our legal counsel, I can make a decision. And I've got some questions, I really do, but that's not part, Lauren, that's not part of what we're talking about now. We're talking about either have an administrative law judge or not do it. And, you know, I've been on the line like this for the past few days to see if I was going to do this or not. And, you know, I've had conversations with counsel about this and with the chief. I mean, you know, I'm torn with the aspect because the ultimate decision is going to rest with us as a board. And, you know, I want to give the employee a fair shake, no matter if it's Chief Fione or anybody else. And if it's going to cost a few extra more dollars, then that's the way it is. I mean, but, so, I'm still on the fence a little bit.
I got another question for staff. Has this happened to us here before? I mean, if we had people that have retired before that have gone, that PERS has recommended an administrative law judge and they've gone through the process?
The answer is, as far as I'm aware of, no.
Have we declined a
We have declined people on disability retirement.
But they haven't appealed.
That's my knowledge.
This is the first appeal you guys will be dealing with.
Would it be improper? Oh, scratch it. if we.
Did you want to speak?
I was thinking out loud.
Well, can
You can speak as a member of the public, but you don't want, yeah.
I'll speak as a member of the public on it.
we?
Okay,
You
that's
need
what I
to
was
fill
doing.
out a piece of paper, please, Frank.
Speak first and then fill out.
I'll
Okay.
take your.
Yeah, I just want to
Michelle,
make
you know who he
sure,
is, right?
I just want,
You know
yeah,
who he is, okay. Right.
Just for a couple points of fact, maybe help not to make a decision on it. If you were gonna vote here tonight to approve my disability, I'd say, great, let's go for it and get the vote and move on with it. But the fact, a couple facts that, there's been others who went through disability who worked up to their last day and then went on disability. It's a fact, there's at least 4 in the past couple decades that have done that. The part about going to an ALJ, I think probably at this point, it's probably gonna be the best to have is somebody who's not involved with it, go through and look at it. I really appreciate the time you've given the things more than been generous on it. But the fact is, if this had been done properly the first time, we wouldn't have been in this situation, and we'd have been reviewing it, we'd have the documentation, been across the desk. The 2 doctors that I did get documentation from, the same 2 doctors from 2004 and 2006 that the district accepted information on them, and one of them was employed by the district for our FEMA team. So the physician's information, I think it's gonna be legal and standing and binding, and the district has accepted plenty of documentation, you saw about this whole process. There's plenty of documentation with the Department of Labor has accepted it, the World Trade Center, the district's accepted a number of the documentation on this process. I think on its merits alone, had you have all been able to look at this, just a few letters that were submitted, and I think this would have been a slam dunk case for everybody. But the fact is, we've gotten to this point here, and because of the process, I think personally I feel more comfortable if we sent this to a third-party person right now that gives me an opportunity to timely present my facts to with my representation and be able to rebut or refute or provide additional information as needed before it comes to you, so that when the information comes to you, it's from a professional dealing with it that actually has my legal counsel working on it as well, and not being forced into it. As it stands right now, you know, I had 3 days to get ready for this setting, and I think I'll have a little bit more time to prepare for it, and I think that's probably gonna be the best at this time right now. I wish we would have voted on it, got over with and approved, and we're off and running, and then it's over, but that's not gonna happen with 4 people sitting here, and best to have 5 of you. Director, I really appreciate you going to bat on this, and I know that there's the concern in the original document of conflict of interest, that part of it, I don't think there is, because others, you know, other people are retired on it, and they're in the process on, so that I think that's a non-factual item on it.
No, that's,
yeah.
Thanks, Frank, but, either way, you're gonna get a fair shake.
I get, you're all in the vote.
Because the documentation that you've already presented our HR should speak for itself relative to what it is. And then we have our counsel, and, I don't like administrative law judges myself. I mean, that's just, it's some retired judge that doesn't do anything anymore. He wants to be a mediator or ALJ or something. That's the only dealings I've ever had with those types of people. But okay, should we call the question? Do I have a second for calling the question? Well, let's see. Chuck, do you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to comment on what Brett said a few minutes ago, and I think that the ALJ would provide us with some background that would be helpful. And Rex ultimately would make the decision, but I think it would be very hard for us if we were doing our duty to hear an ALJ's recommendation and say, I don't care what the ALJ said about those facts. I'm gonna have my own facts. And so I think it would give us some guidance and I think it would allow us to feel that we were being fairer to everybody involved on that. So
probably fair for the staff too, so they don't have to make a recommendation.
But also to his point, if it gives him a chance, I mean, if our staff does it I'm not sure how that works back and forth about, if you had a question, here's the evidence, who actually distills that evidence and makes a ruling on it. And I'm kind of having a little change of heart here. I'm thinking maybe an ALJ is not such a bad thing, because if they look at it, they come down and they have a decision that says, yeah, it is a disability, it's pretty cut and dry. It either is or it isn't. And I think it helps us make a decision. Not sure it helps him, but it helps us make a decision.
And I'd like to just add on to the comment that you made. This is a positive thing about Frank, is that Frank is part of this community. And this is not the end of his service to the community. He's stayed involved, he's been teaching, he's still on the task force, I believe. And I think in some ways to have a third party would help to distance the decision and allow the personal relationships to continue in spite of what was decided one way or the other. So
That's my concern. I already made my views known on that.
Yeah.
okay.
So, did you want to call the question? I'm happy to call the question.
I think hearing, hearing Frank and hearing all of us here past, I don't know, hour or something, Lauren and Gina, thank you
Thanks for trying.
for helping us here, trying to make it, because it's, I mean, I've been pondering this, like I said, for a few days, and with the chief, and so, gosh, okay, so we're going to call the question? You want to say something?
One last public
Just for
comment.
clarity in my position here, I'm confident that the information and the medical records and the dialogue that I turned in, had it been evaluated and made a decision, you would have voted in favor of it. And I'm pretty confident in that part. I'm disappointed it had to go this far, and we have to actually go to administrators, because now it's putting me off several months in the process on it, and leaving me hanging, especially with the USAR team and other commitments out there. But going administrative, if I can ask the district, if this does go through, if we can expedite this to get somebody lined up to move on this process, because it's killing us, it's killing me to wait and go on this. It's affecting my family, it's affecting my health and my life on it. I want to get this thing over with and move on.
Right. Thank you, Frank.
I appreciate your time.
Michelle, be sure you get a card from him. We want to make sure he fills the card.
But it's not required.
Okay, all right, so the motion, so Michelle, the motion is, should, the second motion,
The motion
or
was,
are we going to combine the whole motion?
No,
You want to
you've already
amend?
voted on.
You can
one.
Well, we already voted on one, or you want to?
You can amend it to
All right.
one motion.
All right, let's just, the motion, second motion is to refer to administrative law judge for further review, evaluation, and a recommendation.
As soon as possible.
The appeal that we just approved.
So,
Correct.
if you want, you can amend it, if you want to, you don't have to, but you can amend your motion to both accept and, if you want to just read the language of the resolution.
So I made the motion,
Okay.
so if
Do you want to
I
amend it?
make, I can amend my own motion, right? So I'll amend it to approve a resolution accepting Frank Frioni's appeal to the Fire District Board of Directors, appeal of the Board of Directors' determination to deny his industrial disability retirement and refer to the hearing of the appeal to an administrative law judge. Is there a second?
Of course, I'll second it. I think we've pretty much had the discussion that we need. Chief, would you like to add anything, Chief?
No, I think, to Frank's point, it's, he'd like to get this done. And, we were talking about cost, but I agree with your point. I mean, sometimes it's not about staff time or cost or those things. I mean, Frank was here for 35 years, so, that was the only part of the conversation that I was starting to get a little uncomfortable with.
And to your credit, you were with him too?
Yeah.
And a lot of other firefighters in this district. And, I've always thanked you. You've always been a hero to us. You and Frank and a lot of other firefighters. If you go on my website, I found a picture of you guys. In fact, Chief Stevens too, down there. So, Ed, a bunch of you guys. So, okay, so we're Any more discussion? Okay, well, let's vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 4-0. Okay, thank you, and,
Thank you.
okay, so let's go to, Jeannie, you can go now. I'll you know, do you want to stay to the rest of the,
Well, you moved up another item, which.
Item 17 she can stay for, the chief's
Oh,
contract.
Just in case there are any
oh,
questions.
chief's contract?
Don't forget, yeah. See you all later.
Oh, let's not forget about the chief's contract. Chief, the chief's contract, okay. All right, so we're going to 17, and that's consider for approval a resolution authorizing a contract with the fire chief regarding compensation and benefits effective January 9, 2016 until June 30th, 2018. Okay,
Well, we didn't have to.
well, that's the motion.
Consider a resolution.
So,
Right,
I'm sorry,
that's
who was
the
it
motion.
first?
Rex,
No, Rod made the motion.
I made the motion
Rex
and Rex
seconded.
seconded. Okay, discussion? Chuck?
I need to say to the chief here that I think you're doing a good job. I support what you're doing. I'm going to vote against the contract because I have voted against the contract for the firefighters, I voted against the contract for the chief officers. And part of the rationale for this contract is the compaction argument and so forth. And I just want to be consistent with my previous stance, but I want you to know at a personal level that it's not because I'm unhappy with anything you're doing. I think you're doing a terrific job. I applaud your ability to have come back from a traumatic and severe injury and do the job you're doing. So I am not voting against you, but I am voting against the kind of escalation of contracts that have troubled me since we started voting on this.
Appreciate that clarification. You're very consistent. How would you do that?
Virginia?
No, I'm glad that you were able to have this in the HR committee discussion. And this is what we move forward to the board.
Rex? I'd just like to say thank you for all the years you've been here. And a lot of the compensation that you agreed upon, a lot of the surrounding fire chiefs get a lot more. And I think a lot of it has to do with, Menlo Park Fire Protection District. A little piece is Chief Harold, just like Frank and all the other people that are here. So I thank you for your service. Yes, sir.
So, the discussion, without going into detail, that we had in the HR committee meeting, is one of the things that we take into consideration is what this fire district is gonna look like in the future, when and if we need to hire another chief. So that the board doesn't think that we were just isolating the situation for the current chief. We were trying to look ahead, and that's why, we had the discussions we had, and that's why we are recommending approval of this.
Yeah, let me just make one point to that. So hopefully it's not just hire another chief, it's appoint another chief. So hire makes it sound like you outsource, but
No, we're not
I think we have
outsourcing the
enough
chief.
qualified people inside too, that you can make that
Well, we're looking
determination
at
when
the
you get there.
future, that's the point.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Rex doesn't have anything. So, all those in favor? Aye. Against?
Nay.
And Peter?
I think.
Thank you.
3-1.
Everyone, thank you. All right, so we moved so much stuff around. Thank you, Jeannie, for hanging out.
Thank you very much.
I'm staying, I'm stepping out for a minute.
Wait, you can't leave.
15 minutes.
All right, so I need to do a little.
Are we losing both of our attorneys?
No, I'm coming back. I need 15 minutes. I'll be back. You can continue without me. With the chief's report.
We have a chief report.
Yeah.
We just get
All right,
And hopefully there's no legal issues in the chief's report.
I hope not. Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Chief Long, you're here to the duration.
I'm committed.
You're here. Michelle's gonna be here, you're gonna be here too.
I'm just here to keep her company.
Karen, you can leave anytime you want.
We want you to stay
And
here.
Ben, are you the VC for today?
Yes,
You
sir.
are? Oh, so you're a prisoner anyway.
He's a captain.
And Jack's always here. Okay, so we have the recorded chief.
So directors, unless you have any specific questions, I just want to address the first 4 items, which are the town of Athens, city of East Palo Alto, city of Menlo Park, and county of San Mateo. And just bring you up to speed on the Nexus study, the impact fee information that was sent out based upon last month's meeting and your approval to move that forward. So I'm happy to report that the first entity that actually responded to this was the town of Atherton. Did counterize this item already. The city managers, or town manager asked for some clarification, so he's working with our legal counsel on that, which is Tim Kremen, who's not here this evening, but Tim is working with the town on that. And in terms of the second entity to respond, it was the city of East Palo Alto. City of East Palo Alto currently is doing their own Nexus impact fee study, so they're trying to determine how this would fit in with what they're currently doing. Probably more discussion needs to go on there regarding the timing of that, but you know, their answer isn't that they're not interested, it's that they're also doing something and how would this fit. I've received no response from the city of Menlo Park, and I've received at this point no response from the county of San Mateo. So those two I've not heard from at this point yet. As I put down in here, I think we're at the point where we've reached out to the managers, town, city, and county. So that was done. It was done in written correspondence over email and also sent by mail. Michelle mailed that part. So I think it's appropriate if you wanted to reach out to the different constituents in the town, city, and county regarding, you know, the elected officials. It's probably a good time to do that, because the next step, hopefully, as we'll see with the town, will be that we end up going before the various jurisdictions and hopefully having them hear this. Again, the only place currently where this is calendarized and is ready to go to some extent is the town of Atherton. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer.
No questions, but a comment. Your timing's good because I'm going to be with the city councilman on the 24th. So I'll get together with you and make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
Before that.
And they're two up for re-election, Chief.
Yeah.
Yes, I just saw
City of
the
Menlo Park. Yeah. So can I just commend the town of Atherton for working with us on this? So if you can just let the city manager, or the town manager know that we appreciate that, you know, he's being as collaborative as possible, that would be great. Carrie, same thing with your council, thank you.
You know, not on the report from the town of Atherton is obviously the, you know, everyone's seen the Marsh Road channel issues, the traffic management plan that we've been, you know, working with them on, which was nice to be in the process versus outside the process, as we've kind of experienced in other jurisdictions where we have to speak at public comment versus being considered staff. That's not what happens in the town. And then the last thing, I heard from the Public Works Director the other day, I think I forwarded it on to you regarding where we were with the Hawk traffic signal in Almondral, and that's, you know, if it was up to the town and ourselves.
It'd be done.
Well, right, but that's, you know, it's in Caltrans, they move slowly, and, you know, I was actually interviewed by a reporter this evening about Marsh Road. You know, there is no good way, just so you know, there is no good way to deal with closing down a roadway around here. So, you know, just understand, there's, you know, everything that they're trying to do, we support. It's just difficult based upon, you know, the amount of traffic that we have. So there's going to be impacts. We don't know what that's going to look like yet until it starts to happen, because you can't predict where people are going to choose to go once they decide or find out that that roadway's no longer open. So, you know, they're doing the best that they can. It's kind of making the best out of a bad situation, if you will.
So can I just add one quick comment to, so Carrie, if you would thank Mayor Lewis for continuing this positive relationship that Mayor DeGoya helped put together, that would be great, because I know that you have a lot of things on your plate. just let Elizabeth know that we appreciate it.
Yeah, it actually started 3 years ago.
Or three, well, yeah,
When I was there.
when you were the liaison, right? It's true.
All right. Thank you.
Especially staying here all this time.
I'm telling you.
It's commendable. Okay.
Question?
Go ahead. Chuck?
I had two questions about the report, but not on those items. Can I ask you about the Caltrain
Yes.
rapid rail rescue? I mean, this is so rapid, it's been going on for 7 years, and so far nothing's happened.
And
But
is this the thing you talked about on KQED?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I heard that.
I wonder if it doesn't make sense to look at some like road tracked crane to deal with Caltrain rather than a rail mounted system or something. Just given, first of all, this siding that you're talking about doesn't connect with Caltrain except way up north. And I'm not trying to be technical here, but it seems to me that if we've got some plans that are important in this, that we should be moving forward. And if this is one of those things that's never gonna happen, maybe we should let it go by the wayside, find a crane that we could run along Alma Street or something and lift off any cars that derailed or whatever it might be. I guess I'm not quite sure what the purpose of this is or what we're trying to accomplish here.
So, it goes into just a little bit of what occurred in the past, which was actually, based upon a rail event that we had. We had the longest, or the oldest bridge in the Bay Burn, which is the old Dumbarton Rail Spur. And so out of that, we ended up putting a fire engine on a rail car and started to look into, because it was so complicated and complex to do that, what if something else happened? Fast forward to the 4 enclosed boxcars that you see at Station 77. Those came out of Concord's weapons station and they're decommissioning the base. They were brought along the rail system to the spur, actually to the main line that was there. And then right before the economy declined, they put in, they sunk $250,000 into putting that rail spur into the district's facility there. So, they've spent some money to make all this happen. What didn't happen was the equipment. And, kind of if you think about this in a different way, it's not so much a crane, it's equipment and people. If they back a passenger car in with a locomotive and hook it to the 4 boxcars, if you have the right equipment for dealing with extremely heavy rail cars under derailment and disentanglement situations, meaning that you carry a lot of, for example, oxyacetylene, which you wouldn't typically do. The team doesn't typically carry the quantities that we would need to deal with heavy rail and heavy gauge steel and so forth. Then that's what those boxcars would be, what they would have in them stored. So, and you can't, if you think about derailment, what you can get to anywhere there is a derailment is right up to where the derailment occurred. Because up until where the derailment occurred, typically the track works. So in the case of Niles as an example, where there's a river, if you read the reports or heard the reports, they couldn't even get across the river initially from the roadway to get to the derailment. And what the rail line eventually did the next day, actually quicker than anything I've ever seen before, but you gotta remember that's also where the Niles History Museum is up there, so all their equipment is actually stored within probably about a quarter mile where that derailment occurred.
Different railroad track.
Yeah, different track, but equipment was there. So they were able to move that equipment over, bring a crane in behind it, and then pull the car back up on the track. So that's how they did it so quickly, only because it was there. That's not normal to have it all sitting there like that. Nor is it, quite honestly, if they'd had a car or cars that were more entangled with people trapped underneath them, that would have been a very complex situation where it would have taken them a long time to get to all these people. Like we've seen it in other events, like Metrolink down in Southern California, some of the ones back east where, they're not there for 12 hours, they're there for days on end. That's where a team like ours, your USAR team, would come in with the proper skill sets, with the proper equipment, and be an enhancement to the locals who had already started the rescue. I mean, Alameda County, very lucky, they're part of the USAR team, they're part of Task Force 4. Fremont, Alameda County are all part of Oakland's team. So, they had a lot of resources they could bring to bear there. Good news was they didn't really need to use much of it at all. But, you know, this is still a viable issue, and I gotta tell you, you know, when you start looking at the issues with the rail system, especially for the baseball games, they're traveling with up to 1,000 passengers in these rail cars. These rail cars have more people than you can put on airplanes, in fact, several airplanes. So, you know, that's the big deal, is nobody's really thinking about what's gonna happen. If you bring in the bullet trains, the high-speed trains, remember, it only makes the accidents bigger. You know, we had a group out of Japan that was here. I think, Rex, you were involved with teaching the doctor that was here.
Yeah.
And he was actually, the reason that he was here with the firefighters from Japan is that he had done disarticulations or field amputations of people who had been in a bullet train, had derailed and went through a multi-story structure. And so he, you know, saved 2 people's lives based upon doing the field amputations that were able to get them extricated. And so, you know, he became part of the Japanese rescue team that came over here for training. But, you know, it happens. And I think that's the sad thing with what we're dealing with, is there hasn't been a lot of thought about what's going to occur if something goes wrong. If you remember this last year, I mean, just our district alone dealt with the fatality here at Ravenswood. That was on a small vehicle. Can you imagine that had been a truck? You know, could it have taken the train off the track? The answer is that's happened before elsewhere. So, you know, it could have very easily happened there based upon the type of vehicle. And then the other one that was in front of, you know, the Atherton train station where the gentleman turned onto the railroad tracks in the Prius, you know, I wouldn't have predicted that the Prius would have got hung up underneath the locomotive and caught the locomotive and the Prius on fire. But it did, and we're lucky it didn't get any worse than it was based upon where it was. So, you know, these things happen. I think, you know, I just got a call back actually today from Caltrain, because everybody that we had dealt with was either let go or left during the period of time when the economy went down. If you remember, they're actually looking at not just reducing train service, but there was a time when it was discussed whether or not we needed to have train service anymore during the recession because it wasn't cost effective. Almost seems short-sighted now, given how many people are riding the trains and how many more trains are proposing to have, and all, you know, all the different issues that come along with it. So we're the only facility that I'm aware of in the United States that has 4 boxcars, a rail siding, and a link to the main line that goes to the Redwood City hub. And all they need is, again, they need passenger cars, they need a locomotive, and with the right equipment and mobilization point there at 77, we could have people, you know, mobilized to go to a rail derailment pretty quickly. So.
And would Caltrain or Union Pacific, or would they have that kind of rescue equipment?
They don't have that. They rely on the local rescuers to deal with these issues, and that's part of the problem too. You know, I mean, not to get too deep into it in terms of vulnerabilities, but if you had 1,000 people on a train derailment, there's not a backboards and C-collars in this county to handle just dealing with the patients that would need to be immobilized.
What about the heavy rescue truck that we've talked about?
Well, the rescue truck would have equipment, some equipment that would work on some of the heavier gauge steel. But again, most of what we're dealing with typically is going to be with auto extrication, trucks, and things like that. I mean, you start dealing with the trains, it's a whole different ballgame based upon the size, the gauge of the steel, the weight of the steels. The trucks alone, which are the wheels underneath, are tens of thousands of pounds. So when these things derail, and that is on something, and that alone makes it very difficult with a standard airbag complement on a fire rescue to even lift that up. I mean, we don't have, you know, we have low air pressure bags, but in the USAR cache, but that's really what you need for the heavier objects like this that, again, require a much larger complement or area to store that amount of equipment. It's much bigger.
If you had to guess sort of who would end up paying for all this, would this be grant funded? Would it be Caltrain funded, or would it be district funded?
Last time it was a grant fund through UASI, and it was Homeland Security funds that they used to put the spur in. And that was the end of their money, and it was the end of the grant, and then sadly it was the end of the people that were there that, you know, had at least the shared vision to make this work. So again, all the, you know, the initial pieces are there. And as I told the gentleman I talked to today, I mean, he actually got a phone call, because yeah, KQED called first about urban search and rescue and rail cars, and then we got into this conversation, and they were surprised and got on Google Earth and anybody who gets on Google Earth can see the station, the rail cars, and how it would work. That's where the conversation started. Most people don't even realize that we have that.
Can we, move on?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have another question, I'm sorry about the chief's report. It's important because it's gonna come in another discussion anyway.
Okay, sure, cool.
Yeah, I wanna ask you, just, cause I don't know much about this equipment or anything, but could you just, in a kind of a nutshell, tell us the difference between, say, the benefits of having a Quint and having a fire truck?
Sure.
And I had asked you about the length of the ladder, and you weren't sure, you said, well, it might be the same, it might be shorter. But the Quint seems preferable sort of in a whole bunch of categories, which made me wonder why we buy a fire truck, a ladder truck at all. So anyway, I'd like to know about the.
Well, so a Quint, here's the disadvantage, if you will, with a Quint. So you're putting more equipment on a singular piece of apparatus, meaning that you would not carry typically in a ladder truck the hose, the water, the pump. So you're going to lose some compartment space, you're going to lose some space in general on the apparatus because of that. So that will limit the amount of other equipment that you can carry, although the frame of the vehicle, typically the length of the vehicle will be larger, so it's kind of a balancing act. But to your point, the benefit of a Quint, which, you know, we really never gained the full benefit here because we lost whatever benefit there was based upon the steering the type of steering that we picked with an all-wheel steer, meaning the back wheels could turn. That actually destroyed the program in my opinion, simply because the number of accidents, the difficulty of driving it, the problems with drivers that could actually drive a piece of equipment like that was made, the concept of the entire concept was put into jeopardy because of those types of events. And to be very honest with you, we got rid of a perfectly decent ladder truck that didn't have that many years on it to go to this concept. Well, we probably should have kept the straight ladder like we have here now and gone to another one. So gone to a Quint and done more of what we're proposing to do, which is a trial. The benefit for us as a reserve piece is it can be both. It can be an engine, it can be a ladder truck, so it can fit both positions if we have a piece of equipment that's broken. So that's why it's a great selection, I think, for us in regards to a backup apparatus. The reason I fudged on the ladder length is because, and I'm going to leave this up to Chief Long and let him speak too, because he's been doing the research along with Chief Stevens. There's a lot of different things, technology's changed a lot since the Quints that we have. So quite honestly, the ability of us to have, depending upon the size of the ladder, is dependent upon how heavy of a ladder we want, what we really need. I mean, the metals today, the way that they build these things is much different than the one that we had before, the ones that we had before. So we bought two last time. It was an all-in, got rid of the straight truck. We're not proposing to do that this time, I think, as you know. So I'll let Chief Long talk about what he's found, but again, at the end of the day, the reality is we think this is a good piece of equipment as a fit because of its versatility and how it fits in a complement of engines and a ladder truck. So it's an enhancement, it's a slight modification, but it makes a lot of sense for what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go based upon the configuration that we currently have. So I'll let Dawn talk about the type.
Well, I just mentioned that Chief Stevens and myself next Tuesday will be going to Pierce in Sacramento because they're going to be having one of their demo Quints there on site. So we got it. Good timing, invite that. But looking at the material.
Can we buy it?
What's that?
Can we buy it? The demo?
Well,
depends on what you say.
Depends what you do with other things. We're going to look at it because physically we get our eyes on it. But speaking of ladder length, the technology is much better. And this one, well, I have seen in person, I got a brochure and all that. This ladder on this unit is 107 feet long, which, correct me if I'm wrong, it's longer than the ladder we have on our ladder truck right now. It's a medium diameter, it's lighter, they're made specifically for that, but it still maintains, because typically as she's saying, Quints 10 years ago, to get a ladder that length, you had to reduce the pump capacity, the tank capacity, and all those things. The new materials these days, this has the exact same size pump our current engines have at 1500 GPM. It's got a 500 gallon tank on it, and that 107 foot ladder, all in a 39 foot long profile. So pretty impressive with what they have on the market now. So ladder, like Chief attested to, the thing about a Quint is that they serve certain purposes for what you're trying to do with it. It's not a 100% great ladder truck, it's not a 100% great engine. Put the two together, it's a good combination to help fix, like what Lurk can do. Eventually, we might need a ladder service on one side of the district, while then a ladder on the other. This would be a good way to make that happen at a reasonable cost.
And from a tactical perspective, because this question comes up, in fact, Jack asked me this earlier, you know, one of the things that people get confused on, I think this happened to us here, we had two Quints, was which one's the ladder truck? And the reality, the way we still have a ladder truck that's gonna go to every fire. We're not changing that. That's what probably shouldn't have happened last time, but it did. But it's always an engine first. I mean, the thing you don't wanna do, and you saw this recently, too bad Linda's gone because she lives in San Jose, but you know, one of the stations that they had, Station 30 down in Ozare and close to my neighborhood, you know, they didn't have quote unquote water in the station, meaning they had a paramedic unit and they had a ladder truck. So when the fire occurred directly across the street from the fire station, they couldn't get an engine there for 5 or 6 more minutes, which is a long time to anybody, but the part that the community had a hard time understanding is, it's a fire station, how come there's no water in there? So, you know, again, it's a truck, but it's always an engine first, because the goal is to get the fire out first. So, you know, and tactically, we're not proposing to change that. I think that sometimes the joke is, you know, you spin the wheel and ask yourself, what are you? You know, we're going to clarify all that. The first thing, our job here is to always put the fire out first. If we can do that, then we're good. So we won't have any confusion.
And roughly, if you're talking apples to apples, new to new, they're both about $1.5 million to $2 million?
So this truck is much less than that.
Yeah. Especially the Quint demo that we'll be looking at next Tuesday, I believe, was the 800 range. Of course, it's a little cheaper because it's a demo unit. They build it, they drive around, show it to the markets up and outstate. But if you're buying Quint brand new, equipped, you're looking up to $1 million. You're buying a straight ladder truck, a tiller tractor driven or TDA truck, you're looking at about $1.5 million, ballpark.
And the reason we're asking for up to $1 million tonight is because of the concern that there's not, the second piece of equipment, currently the truck we have doesn't have all the equipment on it. So the other additional funds would go towards outfitting the truck. Right, so if we're gonna do these tests later on, if you approve this, then what we'll be able to do is run 2 trucks at one time essentially within the district, you know, on east and west side, try different models to see how effective, you know, that will be before we actually make a move.
Now, all right, let's go to the consent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second it, but I'd also like to remove something from consent.
Okay.
Number 8, please.
Number 8, all right, so.
Number 8 and number 9.
Okay. So we have a motion for items 6 and 7 to approve.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All 3. Virginia.
Okay.
We're good? Okay. So we've got item 8, consider for approval of resolution accepting the work by Solar Craft Services Incorporated for the installation of solar panels at 2290 University Avenue, East Palo Alto, and directing the filtering of the notice of completion. Is that you, Chief?
It is, and I'm looking up, because they'd sent John's report to the board. Actually, John Hitchcock was the one that responded. I'm trying to find my notes here, but I think Director Bernstein was asking, why did we need to do this? And the answer is because it's the typical normal process for the finality of this work, if the board accepted instead of the fire chief. So the project is done, the solar's been installed, but we technically, legal counsel can correct me, we cannot accept it, only the board can accept it. We're advising you the work is done, And so we're asking for that, we want to get the notice of completion, only the board can get that, right?
I just had a comment about that. I would like us to look into the possibility of changing the procedure and so forth. I feel very awkward approving or having a resolution that something, the work is done and it's satisfactory and so forth, when I don't have a clue, I've never seen it, I don't know anything about it. It's not that I don't trust the staff, but if I'm gonna trust the staff, why not just let the staff approve it in the first place? So,
Just because the law says that the
Is
board
that
needs to
right?
approve, yes.
Yeah.
okay.
You did have the previous staff report that you approved it being there.
I'm just trying to make it more efficient for the staff, but I'll move approval of item number 8.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Number 9, consider for adoption a resolution authorizing the fire chief to execute a contract with Wolford Consulting in the amount not to exceed $20,000 to the updating of the district's.
So this amount, I know Director Burstein also asked a question about the amount, the process, and wouldn't it be easier just to do it ourselves? You know, similar to the last answer, although not legal, but it protects you from going down the legal route, is to bring in a third party. We've used this vendor before. This is a fraction of the cost of what it cost the first time to establish defendable fees. You know, again, I look at legal counsel. I mean, we were never challenged on our fee schedule, but had we been challenged on our fee schedule going backwards before we put this vendor into play, I think it would have been difficult to justify some of the fees that we had, especially as we brought the vendor in and found out, you know, what the market would bear, how they do their process, which is through an analytical process. That's common industry processes around. So this is, the reason this is a much less expansive contract than the first time is actually because we do have a proper process in place. This is really to update the process because the compensation has changed for some of the positions. Again, the board sees this at the end, so you can still make decisions regarding specific fees if you want to reduce them by an amount, if you want to waive them for certain things. So this does come back to you, but this is a professional company that legitimizes our fee structure. And, you know, like I encouraged our fire marshal, who at one time said, well, we'll just do it ourselves. And I said, no, this is one of those ones, yeah, you're laughing. We don't want to do it ourselves. So.
Thank you, Chief.
But as I understood from the staff report, the structure that exists now, we still have that in place. We know how many hours it takes, we know this
Correct.
and that. Now, if the technology has changed, or if we're reviewing the plans electronically rather than on paper, or if there's some reason that the actual work has changed, I could understand this a little bit better. But when all it says is it's 3 hours of a plan checker, well, a plan checker used to cost X, now a plan checker costs Y. Why not just multiply 3 hours times Y instead of X? It just seems like such a trivial kind of thing. And I used to be in financial analysis, and I would say, oh, updating this, maybe it's $5,000, but somehow 20 just seems much too much money for what we're doing.
I think we're getting off pretty easy, I tell you. But so here's, let me just explain it to you this way. This is maybe easier to understand, because I don't disagree with you. Maybe the third time that this would be a good question. The first time when the evaluations were done and when the questioning was done and when the final, you don't know what the final outcome's going to be, right? So I think a lot of the answers were driven by a lack of understanding of what the end would look like and what that would mean. So to your point, you're right. If we knew absolutely here's the package for how we do an inspection, that that's 100% spot on, I would agree with you. Unfortunately, the first time around, because that was the unknown, there have to be adjustments made because things aren't as straightforward, if you will, as they could have been. I think this time around, the division will get it right because now they realize, hey, this turned out to be this, and this turned out to be that. It's not exactly how we would do it. Maybe it takes more time, maybe it takes less time. Maybe it's done slightly differently than we explained it when we really didn't understand what the outcome would be. So there's a number of adjustments that the fire prevention knows that they need to make. And so, again, I would agree with you on the third time around, because then it should be pretty much locked in. You know, there should be no mystery to what it's gonna be. We've had the experience of one go-around in time, and as the second adjustment goes on, you work out all the bugs, and the next time it is more mechanical to just the dollar amounts.
So what you're saying is, at this point, you don't have like 100% confidence
I
in
don't.
what we have.
I don't. And I don't have.
That wasn't clear from the staff.
Yeah, well, it's the nuance, right? Because all the inspectors were, well, two of them that are left, the fire marshal and Bob Locke, were interviewed last time, and they really didn't, because they'd never been on the other side of this to see what it looked like, they really didn't understand what the outcome part of it would be. So now they see it, and in some cases where they look at the fee and they say, man, that's too high because it takes less time. Well, too late. You've already given the input to the guy doing this report. So I think they see now that, you know, what their inputs will be, what the output's gonna be, what the report's gonna say. They can correlate all of that, I think, more cleanly than it was done last time. You know, some fees will go up, some fees will go down.
Okay, well, I'd like to move approval of item number 9.
Second?
I think we've had the discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Okay, we're going to the regular agenda. Item number 10, report on potential establishment of a benefit assessment area and provide further direction to staff.
So at the meeting in January, if you remember, Sky Woodruff from our office came and presented us to many different options for funding for the district. And at the February meeting, we were given just basic direction to go forward and kind of figure out what the next steps would be for exploring an assessment district. So this is actually just a very brief staff report, and what we're recommending to the district is, at this point, if you're interested in an assessment district, the next step would be to direct staff to finalize information as to what exactly the facilities and equipment the district would want to fund if we move forward with an assessment district. And the other recommendation, if you're interested in moving forward, would actually be to go ahead and engage an outside consultant. And the reason that we would need an outside consultant on this project is multifaceted. First, and Myers-Nave would be happy to assist in finding the proper consultant for this kind of work. We have many people that we've worked with before, so we could put together a list for you if that's the direction that you want to go in. And it's important to have a consultant because there are many different ways that we can draw the boundaries of an assessment district. And what we would probably recommend in consultation with a consultant would be to do this as a two-step process. So we would ask a consultant first to work with the district to come up with what potential boundaries we would like to draw based on what staff and what the board decides are going to be the facilities or equipment within the district that we're funding, because the way that we're going to draw our lines are going to have to do with those projects. And then secondly, once we figure out what we're doing and what the boundaries would look like, the consultant would help draft the engineer's report, which is a necessity and required by the law if you're going to have an assessment district. And we don't need to get into it tonight, but as was discussed in the presentation in January, there are still some legal hurdles and some challenges when fire districts want to fund assessment districts. So we would definitely want to have the help of an outside consultant to make sure that our engineer's report is solid and that we can avoid any kind of legal challenge. So at this point, staff is just asking the board for further direction if we want to move forward in taking any of these steps at this point, doing any of the research, trying to engage a consultant, or if we want to table it for another time.
I'd like to move forward. I would too. So if we move it forward, would the facility, assessing the facilities and the equipment, would that come first, or would all of this be done simultaneously before the consultant, or would all of this be done simultaneously?
I would probably recommend a simultaneous investigation as to the facilities and equipment that we want to fund, while a parallel beginning research into putting out potentially an RFP for a consultant or getting our list of recommended consultants. Yeah.
Okay. So the consultant wouldn't necessarily be working with the staff on determining the
facilities? Probably not. Probably internally, the staff would determine what they want to fund, and once we know what we want to fund, the consultant would help draw the boundaries, knowing what those.
Okay.
And you could use the existing information from the Nexus study.
Yes, sorry, I should have guessed.
Okay. So it's not, that's all.
We're not reinventing the wheel.
Right, thank you.
Let me just say, I think people or businesses or residences or whatever who use or need certain kinds of things should be willing to pay for those things. In some ways, though, I think the fire district, to its credit, but also to its detriment, the fire district has been very proactive in assessing risk, saying where are the problems, we're going to go fix those things, and even dealing with things like a Caltrain derailment or tall buildings or whatever. And by doing that, and some people, both staff and board members, have said, really, this equipment benefits everybody. The ladder truck is a benefit to everybody who lives in the district. To the extent we make that argument, I think we really hurt ourselves in terms of the assessment district. Because I think we could make a valid argument, and I'm not trying to, I think single-story homes don't need a ladder truck as much as a 10-story building does. And I think that if we maintain that assertion, that we would have a better chance of getting the 10-story buildings to fund the ladder truck. But if we say everybody benefits, I think the precedence has shown that it's very hard to have an assessment district, and they can call them defective or whatever, if whatever you're buying benefits everybody. How do you get some people to pay for it, but everybody gets to use it? And I think we're kind of, how should I say, I applaud the fact that we're looking at risk, that we're trying to deal with all those things. That's what we should be doing, but I think it hurts our case for trying to do this assessment district. And when all's said and done, if there's very few things, as I read this, that we could base an assessment district on. Height is one. It's possible that density is a second. But again, we have to have a clear vision. And I'm not saying we shouldn't go ahead and I'm going to vote for buying the Quint and all those kinds of things. But we hurt ourselves by going off and buying all this equipment out of our own budget and then arguing that we have to have an assessment district to pay for it. So I feel like we're kind of going in opposite directions here, and we don't have a consistent strategy for getting what we want.
So just to be clear on the reserve piece of equipment, so the Quint, we would need that regardless. So all the new, I know Director Carpenter made an issue of this last time, that he was concerned that we not get too far ahead of the apparatus purchases, like the tiller, the engine, the squad, all those pieces of equipment. Those are still, we haven't moved forward with that. We're going to start looking at that and specifying what we want to see. But the immediate need of the Quint is that the ladder, the reserve truck that we have is 26 years old. So it's well past its normal life expectancy, so.
But I'm not trying to argue against us here. I'm just saying that if you say a 107-foot ladder is, a 107-foot ladder is required for 1- and 2-story residences, it hurts our case for arguing that we need ladders to get to those 110-story buildings or 8-story buildings.
I didn't look at it, I mean, when I read this, I wasn't thinking about ladders and equipment. I was thinking about Station 77 and how do we, with the M2 coming into live, how do we build facilities, remodel that facility, or either buy another piece of land where we can put another station that makes our response times within our standards of coverage.
But why should somebody who's building on vacant land pay an extra fee for that when somebody who lives somewhere else doesn't have to pay it?
I think part of it was, we had that discussion before, is we're not after the residents. We're after the people in the M2. They're going to bring in the traffic and the extra people. It's going to require us to keep our response times. So we need to either remodel the station that'll carry enough equipment to handle all those extra people, or look for another station that's within our standards of coverage. I don't think we're after the residents.
Well, let me say, I'm agreeing, but I want the same thing you want.
Chuck, Virginia, would you like to say something?
No, I'm okay.
Because it's kind of like a tangent here. Go ahead, Rex.
That's it. I mean, what I mean, I looked at this and I thought about facilities, not as much about that. The equipment goes with it because we need to put it in the facilities, but what kind it is and how it goes and where it goes. But I just think the development the M2 says is that they're gonna cause us to have an increase in a facility that needs to be upgraded to keep our response times. That also benefits the citizens without charging the guy with a single family dwelling.
I would, as Rex said, I'd like to go forward with this and go to our next step, which would be to work with the boundaries and with the consultant and identify what equipment you actually need for a particular area.
So I would potentially recommend, if you want to make a motion to direct staff to research what facilities and equipment would be funded by an assessment district and bring back recommendations
There you go.
or a contract.
That
for
sounds like
all
a
this.
pretty good
Does he
motion.
need to have a motion at all? We can just direct staff to do that, right?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, and then just bring it back.
Yeah, just tell us, we'll start with that.
There you go.
That's your direct.
There you go, Chief.
Chief has another comment, Bob.
Look, let me say, I support that too, but I thought when we were directing staff, we were supposed to take some sort of a sense of the board members.
We do, we need to get kind of at least a head nod from everybody.
Do you want to go forward?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's fine.
Did
So,
you?
yeah, so we'll just direct staff.
And Rex has already said, and I have, okay, there you go, thank you.
So just one point of clarity, since Carrie's here, and we're talking about the Nexus impact fee. So, the whole point, and for the public portion of this, for anyone that's going to watch this was in addition to, in case the impact fees were not accepted or adopted by all the jurisdictions. The strength of the district's argument, we think, which has been working with the vendors and the various comments from the jurisdictions, was that we did a lot of reach out. It's been over 3 years. But at the end of the day, if the town or the cities or the counties say no, then the district has no recourse, where this method is controlled by the district. However, is not necessarily more preferred methodology, because we would rather have that the local jurisdictions are working in conjunction with us and accepting the same methodology they're using, which are impact fees.
Yes,
So,
and I should have mentioned that is in the staff report, that the assessment area is intended to move forward in conjunction with the district's current impact fee process.
Yeah, so we're not trying to do both. We're gonna do one or the other. We're moving forward simultaneously, because we don't know what's gonna happen with the different jurisdictions. And if a month has gone by and you haven't heard anything in some jurisdictions, that may not be a good bellwether.
I don't think Athens is gonna build a 10-story high-rise hotel.
I'm pretty sure Athens will have a whole lot to worry
No,
about.
I don't think so. So Chief, you have your direction?
Yes, sir, I got it. We're each other.
Just to add on to your point, I mean, what should I say? We have as much of a challenge, it seems to me, convincing Menlo Park to put this on their agenda as we would have convincing people, landowners in the M2, to vote for these impact fees. So we're not in total control of what happens.
No.
These people, the M2 people would have to say, oh yeah, I really need that, I'm gonna vote for that. And that's a big challenge.
I think to give you a little relief from that, I'm not gonna say that everybody's gonna agree, but I can tell you with the developers that we've been working with, how we arrived at the schedule that we have currently in the impact fee and the way that we did it, was in conjunction with certain developers, which was Facebook, David Bohannon, and Greenheart. So, it's not every developer, it's not Tarleton, it's not Sobrado, it's not Stanford, to name a few others, but I mean, we'll reach out to them as well. I mean, the good news is, this time around, we were sitting with the developers versus the developers sitting on the other side of the table saying no and hell no, quite honestly, in days gone by. So I think we're working from a position of collaboration that we took a long time to get to. So I'm not saying everybody's going to say yes to that certain methodology, but I think a lot more would agree that the district should not be disadvantaged by growth, and that some of these jurisdictions, like, and I'll use Menlo Park, should reap all the benefit while the the district is struggling to add resources and move things and get around the district. And I think everybody, the picture's a lot clearer now than it used to be in terms of the impacts of the fire district and the community at large. And one last thing I'll give you is a suggestion, which I'm gonna start moving forward with. I mean, we're always seeing the Connect Menlo presentations on the east side. We should probably do our own presentation of all the data that we've been putting out there, where we're going for the next 10 years, and how that, specifically how the east side is going to be impacted, whether it be by the Willow Road overpass construction, daily by traffic, the growth, and what it means to the fire district and the impacts we're already seeing. Because quite honestly, I think people don't really understand how bad it is and how bad it can get. If both those resources are committed out there, there's a gap of time where we don't necessarily have anything on the other side of the freeway that can respond to the call. So, the plan's in play, but we're not there yet.
Okay. All right, so staff has its direction.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments? All right. We're going to go to number 12. Discuss options and provide direction to staff concerning the proposed secured property tax revenue budget for 2016, 2017. Is that you, Kathy? Well, there you go.
We did take this to the finance committee. We do this every year. We're trying to get the board's approval on what is an appropriate secured property tax growth rate assumption to use for the next fiscal year's budget. After talking with the finance committee and going through the different options, they had chosen to increase the growth rate at 4%. That is what was done in prior years. It is a semi-conservative estimate to go with. Yeah, I think, if you look at, on page 2, you look at the graph, you can see where the property tax really took that dive in the 2010-11 area and then started coming up. We've been consistently coming up since then, and this was all because of the financial crisis, and the housing market suffered from that. So, yeah, just going forward, the finance committee did review all options and decided on the 4%, and so we are hoping that we'd like to get the board approval to use that as the growth rate for the secured property tax.
So there isn't a request for a motion here, but I'd like to make a motion to keep it at 4%. It's been there for, I think, ever since I've been on the board.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, through the last 4 years.
4 or lower,
Well, about that, around there. So, and I think that the finance committee recommendation is prudent, and I would make a motion to that effect.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
I have one comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it clear, and it was something that the finance committee, did do this. I support it, and the finance committee did too. But I just want to be clear that that was also the recommendation from staff of 4%. And I say that because it wasn't the finance committee charging ahead and ignoring what staff was recommending, but staff said it. We had a discussion of it, and then we agreed that that was the right answer, so.
Great, thanks.
Right.
Call the question.
Okay. All in favor of,
The motion to keep the
right,
property
Property
tax
tax
rate
at
at 4%.
at 4%, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 13, discuss and consider improvements to the audio recording of the board meetings and provide direction to staff. Chief, is that you? Or is that Tom? Or is that Kathy? 13.
13, and it can be me, I think it's really, you had asked for, so I think it'd be actually Dawn and myself, because Dawn supervises IT, but, you know, I know that we'd asked IT, and you'd asked us some time ago, what are some of the improvements that can be made? I think Ben presented some options, it's up to the board, whether you want to do something, nothing, pick one of the options that we can look at here, try to give you different costs and so forth for that. And, you know, right now we post to YouTube, as you know, so it's really, you know, anything we do going forward is just a matter of greater expense, more time, but, you know, it might be worthwhile if that's what you choose to do. First big step we took before was to go to the cameras that we currently have and post to YouTube, so that's been working for the last, what, year or two. And so it's a matter of, you know, what else you'd like us to do going forward.
When I had reviewed
Jim?
some of the YouTube, sometimes there's an issue with who's closer and who's further away with the microphones. And that would be the only consideration that I would want to enhance not more the video, but more the audio. The video's there. I mean, you know, it's the audio. I don't know if we need to place an enhancement tape or.
Well, with the report, Ben had included, you know, two options for you. And one is just a single mic sitting on your table. However, you probably have to pass it around. The second option would be having actually two mics would pick up most, you know, verbal from all the board members. He did also include what the cost of those two options would be. And then the only other thing in discussions with him on the project that he put together is, you know, this wasn't something that was funded for this year, so we either need to look at one-time funds to move quickly, or we do it through the budget process for next year.
Well, I think we need the enhancement of the audio. What do you think, Jeff?
I just have a question that wasn't quite clear to me. It seemed to say that the way we're doing it now requires a whole lot of staff time for something else, clear what exactly. But then it also said that if we got this new thing, that would require more staff time. So I'm not sure which is better.
I know the staff time now that takes so long is downloading the way that is on the camera onto a downloadable form to be putting onto YouTube, and it takes a long time. It's amazing.
Well, if our meetings were shorter, nothing would be shorter.
And the option that Ben and I presented was actual live streaming, so this would be live, whereas right now it's just recorded and posted, you know, a day or two later.
But would live streaming take less staff time than the downloading?
It would be immediately uploaded, and yeah, to what, we don't know, what, YouTube?
Yeah, but the cost would be this additional cost.
Right.
Which we don't have in the current budget.
But we're working through the budget process, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that could be for next year's
Well,
budget.
yeah, we're March, so we're not that far away.
So I understand what Rob's saying in terms of the, and it's probably my voice more than anyone's, because
It's kind of my voice too.
so I get that.
Maybe
But the
because we're in
thing
this
is,
corner here.
it could be, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not sure, y'all have a lot on your plate with the assessment district, the impact fee. I mean, I kind of view this as kind of lower priority, and I could, I guess, project my voice a little more, you know what I mean, if it helps. I just think there's a lot on staff's plate right now. This has not been budgeted in for this fiscal year. That's not to say it's not a legitimate point, because I've seen the videos too. I just feel like there's a lot on your plate right now that this is extra thing that may not be a priority, or shouldn't be, in my opinion.
Rex?
I have no opinion.
Okay.
I don't care what you do with it.
The extra mics, could help. I mean, I don't know about the live streaming, well, that might be a little bit over, but I just think, like I said, that the audio needs to be improved. And if the mics will, two different mics, one here and one there, or do that, well,
I mean, I don't
Two and then
disagree
no one up there.
Yeah, I just don't know how logistically you would do it. I know with the, you hate to compare, but at the Harbor District meeting, they've got those little mics that you tape down here, but
We've been.
isn't there a wireless?
In IT, he approached this from the overall live streaming and mics.
yeah.
We can go back, if that's the direction, and say, hey, let's just look at the current recording, but include mics for the better audio.
I bet you, I bet you,
Hopefully wireless
I bet you
mics.
there's wireless mics that would be able to be used with an enhancement that would go to the
It'd be a quicker and a cheaper fix, cheaper than what was proposed with the live streaming.
Yeah, so would you be willing to, does it make direct staff to at least look at those
Oh, absolutely.
little tape-on mics and not go for the whole
Oh,
direct feed? 'Cause
oh,
I would do
I'm
that.
not, like
I
I
mean,
said,
but I mean, it shouldn't take that much time, right, just to, okay.
no, I mean, the live stream was there as a staff recommendation to try to upgrade our whole thing. I mean, when you're looking back here, I mean, maybe, you know, we need a few drapes, you know, an outdoor window, you know, with aspen or veil out there or something.
Is that
or-
what you're saying,
Or,
Robin?
or like, you know, maybe rearrange the furniture, maybe we can buy, no, I'm just kidding. No, I think just the mic enhancements
Yeah.
would be good. So Chief, if you could go back and find out if you can put 2 mics to enhance our audio capability, that'd be great. Because video is video.
Yeah, and that gets, you know, as you know, because we all watch it, you know, as the fans go on in the summer, the doors open and
Yeah.
closing, I mean, so the
It'll
remote
pick
remote mics will be a better way to pick
Right,
it up.
and it'll pick
Yeah.
up the closest noise, which will be open and door, you know, the close, you know, Jack moving around back there, I know.
Okay.
All right, so,
Themselves for dinner.
so staff knows.
Firefighters calling each other for dinner or overtime.
Is it ready?
Okay, let's go, let's see, item 14, consider discussion authorize the chief to spend up to $1 million to negotiate the purchase of a factory demonstrator Quint fire truck based upon immediate need to replace the current reserve truck.
So moved.
Second. I think we've had the discussion, Chuck, about what we need to do, right? Okay. Virginia?
No.
I think. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0.
Thank
15.
you. And the firefighters thank you too.
Oh, I bet. Driving around that other truck.
Yeah, We're
They blamed
running
you.
out of life.
They blamed you for the second truck.
Well, they didn't blame me when we first got it, but yes, it's past 2 years now, we blame them now.
Okay. 15, accept the report of the status of Station 2 as of February 29, 2016. Now, Chief, before you give your report, okay, I was at a jail opening for San Mateo County Sheriff, and they beat us. Okay, now they built a huge jail, okay, a huge facility, maybe 20 times larger than our fire station. So I'm not blaming you, Chief, but is that contractor gonna bid on Station 6 by any chance?
Yes, so far it has.
He has?
Jail or your
Response
security
right
is looking on your door.
Has he?
Shockingly and yet surprisingly, yes.
Really? Is that right? Can you give him my phone number?
There's no furniture in the cubicles, come on.
Okay,
We've tried to encourage that, you know, performance is how you get.
okay, that's all.
So I hear you.
So the opening date,
It's really up to you as the board. I mean, so the dates, you know, we could do an opening, we could do a soft opening with just you know, cutting the ribbon and then doing those things in a week. But we probably want to do something for the community to be able to come out. That's why we picked a weekend too. There can be 2 separate events, but that's up to you. I mean, I wouldn't want to not have an opening where we didn't invite members of the community out to come see the new fire station.
so you're looking at,
So a weekend
Pushing it.
makes that tough, you know what I mean?
right, so you wanna put it like a 30-day open window here on this, or?
Well, I mean, those are the dates that we picked so far that we think would work within the contractor's schedule, that they've committed to it being finished as well. We won't be occupied yet, but, you know, it's probably better that we open it and not have it occupied, because they get people's personal property in the station and so forth. So, yeah, we discussed that too, because then there's turnouts and helmets and other things laying around that maybe we don't want laying around, because they may not be laying around when it's all said and done, so.
You know, they even moved prisoners already.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
gosh, they're.
up for it.
You, Ron, you say, here's what you say to them. You go, where's that dispatch, that new dispatch center at?
Ooh, or their new OES
We built the jail
facility.
before we built the dispatch center.
Or the
Come on.
new OES facility that
Yeah,
they're
well,
supposed to have.
that's right.
Okay.
April 27th.
All right, so,
April 27th, 28th, or 29th, or 30th.
Or one, you know, 2 out of the 3.
27th and 28th and 30th.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, what was it, April 27th?
So 28, we could do the grand opening, and the 30th, we could do the community open house day. Everybody could
so we're
come see
doing the
it.
28th and the 30th.
20th of April.
27th is a Thursday.
No, 27th is a Wednesday.
Oh, it's a Wednesday, I'm sorry.
So we're gonna do the,
So that's,
Oh, what were we talking about?
That's so you can invite, you know, the elected officials, everybody, you cut the tape, the
that would be the
whole.
27th, or I'm sorry, the 28th, which is
28th.
Thursday.
Correct.
28th will be the ribbon cutting?
Correct.
Pick a date.
Yeah,
28th.
Forget
28.
when it is.
28.
Can we make sure that this is not the meeting of the city council that night or some other conflict?
No.
You know, they're usually on
Those are
Tuesdays.
Those are on Tuesdays, and this will be during the day, right?
Correct.
Right, and so, and then what would be on the 30th?
30th
Open
would be
house.
an open house for the community. Anybody want to come by and see the station?
And what time would that be?
All day?
All day,
And that's a Saturday, the 30th.
Yeah.
It's in there.
11 to
Okay.
4.
Yeah, I mean,
Is
all,
Michelle gonna send us that,
well,
the
she,
Yeah.
invite for the 28th?
she would once we get the
Yeah,
dates.
Yeah.
So for the grand opening, right now I have for the 28th, what time would that be?
Let's see, we gotta think about traffic, right, so the morning's not
6
good.
o'clock, yeah.
6
Yeah, exactly, 5 o'clock in
You
the
know-
morning.
Well, let's stay away from, like before 11 and after
10 or
3.
2.
Huh?
Yeah, 10 or 11, somewhere after the morning commute
Right.
is off.
Yeah, and
10 o'clock or
lunch.
2 o'clock.
Or 2 o'clock.
Do 11, they cut out early for a long lunch.
Yeah, I
There you
would do
go. Oh, then you,
11.
yeah, then you get to
Ah.
meet the people by
I
lunchtime.
would
There you
do
go.
11.
Although they'll wonder why we didn't
All right,
supply
so,
lunch, but.
so we have the ribbon cutting
That's why you do it
on the
Tuesday.
28th,
April at 11,
11
right?
o'clock.
28th at 11 o'clock, and then the open house is the 30th, which is all.
Rex said 11 to 4 during the day.
That's fine.
11 to 4
On the
30th?
Saturday, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
April 30th,
All right,
open
so
house.
the motion we have is the open house will be April 28th at 11. And
Ribbon
the,
cutting, you mean?
Yeah.
excuse me, the ribbon cutting and the open house would be on April 30th between 11 and 4.
Got it.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Do we need a motion?
Well, I'm.
Yeah, basically, you're not, you don't need a motion.
Yeah, we don't need a
You
motion.
directed the
Just get
staff
it
to make it happen.
Yeah, just
Is
make
that
sure
okay,
we
Chuck,
send out
you
the
good? The
invitation.
date, or
So
the date
is-
all right? Okay.
Was there a motion or are we?
We don't have to
No,
go
we're just gonna say,
Yeah.
Consensus.
we're just gonna tell you that's where it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I
You're
heard a
welcome.
second, I heard.
No motion, just
Okay.
direction to staff, so we'll look for the invitation.
Right.
Right.
And then we've got 16.
Oh, wait, I wanted to comment though on questions on this one.
On what?
On this
16?
item, on 15.
Oh, 15. Oh, okay, I thought we were.
We were talking about the party, but I asked the question about this door issue, and let me say, the response from staff, I didn't mean to make any staff person offensive,
No.
but they go out with dates about all the problems with the
But
contract.
John, he's very anal that way, so you got, and John's all about dates,
Well, my only point
which is a
here
good
is
thing, actually.
that I hope we can learn something from this, because it's infuriating to read this, that this whole thing is held up because of a door that could have been ordered a year ago. And what do we do? I mean, there have to be ways, and I guess I'm directing this even our legal staff, where we put in certain penalties for, you know.
They're in there.
They're in there.
They're
For
gonna
the whole
incur
station.
penalties, they're gonna lose money, You know what, and we call these critical path, and John Hitchcock is on this, that's why I say, the reason he gives you dates, because he lives in there.
Okay.
You know, Director, if I could make people do things, I would. You know, if we could fire people without getting into litigation and stopping a project, we'd probably be there too. You know, it's very frustrating, right? Because you get to these points, they say things that happen, and then when they don't happen, to the point of critical path, being able to open the station, you know, I don't understand it. I work in construction. I've seen people like this. I worked around them. I never worked with them. I mean, the people I used to work with, this would have never happened.
Do you attribute this to the project manager, or do you attribute this to the contractor?
It's the contractor and the subcontractors. It's the, you can blame it on a variety of things. Sometimes it's the economy. It's them, you know, doing multiple jobs, trying to make as much hay as they can in a good economy. So they got their people everywhere. They bid on everything. They get jobs. You know, they can't really fully commit. When they do it for a couple of days and they're gone. They're somewhere else.
Could we get, like an after-action thing? Just to,
Yeah,
what
the
the
best
mistakes were on this
best
guy?
after action, you hit it earlier.
Lessons
Just
learned.
don't hire the same group again.
Right,
Well-
for Station 6.
Well, I mean,
That's a real consideration, is that, you
Yeah.
know, the contractor wasn't
Delay.
performing well, why would you hire the same contractor again?
Right.
Well, you might know, because they know what they're doing, where we've already seen the hospital not get finished in Palo Alto. They had the Mitchell Park
Yeah.
Center, the guy went out of business and they brought in someone else to finish it. It could have been worse. So sometimes
we didn't-
the partner that you know might be better than the one
Right,
you
we
don't
weren't
know.
doing the Turner construction in the hospital, because that's, nobody's gonna touch that project, right? So.
but they built the parking garage first.
Yeah, and they built the Niner Stadium, they did that under budget.
2 years.
Yeah,
Well, it's a little bit
Done.
different.
right.
All right, so,
Wasn't a crazy hospital with a million chicken orders.
Good.
So we got.
So my point in this was, I hope we learn from it and somehow deal with it. I don't know what
Yeah,
it
he has
means.
learned a lot from it.
Yeah, so, and remember, you got John managing, so, you know, technically I'm managing John, but quite honestly, you know, John does fine on his own. He needs help every once in a while, but really not much. He's learned so much. And then we have a project manager, and then we got the contractor, and then we got the subcontractor. So we got a number of layers of management, but I gotta tell you, it's still, I mean, you know, you can hear the voices in the room on a meeting day, which is once a week. Because stuff just doesn't get done sometimes, so.
all right.
But we have all those things you asked for, there's penalties in there, there's late fees, there's all, I mean, you know, stay tuned, we're not done yet. So I mean, at the end, I just told John, make sure you push it all the way to the back. Let's get it open, then we could call the attorneys at the end, but don't pull a Turner Construction where, you know, we're suing each other in the middle of a project and everything's a dead stop.
Okay.
Yeah, happy
16.
days, happy days.
Happy day, 16. How are we doing with, accept the status of fire station?
6 is moving, so we're still hoping for the May, June, basically kicking it off. I mean, as John says in there, I mean, you know, it's had its issues too, but they're working through it with the architect. And,
Are there any issues with the city of Menlo Park?
Actually, the city of Menlo Park has been pretty good.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, it's really on the architect right now to go ahead and do the final submittal.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, 17? Please.
We did that, that's the chief's contract.
Oh, there you go, okay.
You're
Reports and
welcome to
requests.
do it again.
Yeah, well, you want to do it again? No, okay, all right. 18, President's Report. Well, myself and Virginia on the 25th went to Board of Supervisors, and was it the 23rd?
See you Thursday, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Good night, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Good night, y'all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jack.
Excellent meeting.
Thank you, Jack.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. Okay. February 23rd, we went to Virginia and I went to Board of Supervisors meeting with the presentation of the National Heart Month and the Hope Point app. And then, gosh, I have nothing else to report. Directors, Chuck?
I don't have anything to report for any of my
Okay.
responsibilities.
Rex?
Emergency preparedness, we did that today,
Wait, I have something.
5 o'clock.
Okay, all right, well, where are we going?
So we looked at the strategic plan that we had put forth before, the one that you have, it was approved by the board, if you like it, we'll probably go back and as things come off of it, we'll put things on it. For the most part, we've got a lot of stuff already done. One of the things that is interesting, we started looking at the public outreach. You know, how do we get to schools and churches and other things like that? We've got about 1,000 kids here in the next couple of months that are gonna get CPR, which I think is great. But that didn't stop there. So we're gonna try and make sure that we get good media coverage on that so it becomes a little bit more visible. Maybe we'll get more people in the community interested at the churches and community centers and senior centers and stuff like that. That's about it. Post Point, it's out, it's running, and it's good.
What's out in Williams, sir?
Virginia?
Post Point.
Oh.
The app on your phone.
Yep. Virginia?
So I don't have any, I just have a quick report, which is, Rob and I did go to the Board of Supervisors meeting and represented the fire district. You had a chance to say a few words, and so I just thank the Board of Supervisors for their support. And you were mentioned in the Serafina's remarks too, and I thank Don because he kind of helped start this process on the county level. So
The Chiefs couldn't get it done, but the Girl Scouts could.
and the chiefs were there, and I thought
Says
we
something,
looked
doesn't it?
good. I mean, the fire district looked good, and we represented the fire district and the county well. So I'm just very glad that Pulse Point is finally out. Thank you, Harold.
Well, use
And
the
thanks for bringing
Girl
it to
Scouts,
me.
I'll tell you.
Well, and they were great.
You
I
get to
mean,
be
there were-
contractors, you gotta make
I'm
it.
telling you, man, I should have thought of that years ago.
Yeah, so you know, the funding and the implementation took some time, and thanks for bringing it to my attention and letting me
Well,
have
you
the
gotta
opportunity
give
to
her
work
and her
on
dad,
it.
like you said, a lot of credit, because that was, it took a little bit of pointing, but
They were great.
yeah, they got it.
Yep, thank you.
Michelle, wants our ethics and sexual harassment training completed by the end of this month?
This month?
By the end of March?
ASAP. I need form 700 by the end of the month.
And then you
Okay.
need 700 forms too,
Yes.
by the end of the month, correct?
I work it out for me.
Homework.
And then,
Just put it on target safety. It's the
we
same.
also, I made a request last meeting, that goals and objectives for the different standing committees be completed by the end of the month also. So, emergency preparedness is done.
The other
So-
committees don't meet.
Huh?
The other committees don't meet.
Well, they can have coffee together if they want. I mean, they can, talk on the phone, see what they wanna do.
No, they cannot.
No, they
But in the
can't.
next,
Well, they
Okay.
can do
at
it
their next
together,
meetings.
two of them. Two people cannot,
No.
What if they're the full committee?
the full committee.
I mean, what is the question?
No, it's a
Separate
committee,
goals.
two members.
They can't. It's
No.
a standing committee. They
Yeah,
can't.
no,
Okay,
standing
can't-
committee.
That's a
We
Brown
have
Act
we have a
body.
meeting
Okay.
set up.
Standing committees
Okay,
in the
that's
state
all right,
police
all right.
are Brown Act
Forget I
bodies.
said
Gotta
that.
teach ethics.
Uh,
I have a quick question about the training.
okay, sure.
Michelle, the training is due every 2 years, is
It's
that
every
correct?
2 years, yes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
you have been contacted by me if
AB
you want.
1234?
We
And
have been contacted.
1234 and 1825. Yeah, so
We'll talk.
I have contacted you if you are due for it for sure.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase my last request, so I don't tell anybody to break the law. 'Cause don't meet. There you go. Don't break the law and don't meet.
So
Yeah.
just to
Don't
be
meet
clear,
the
standing
goals.
committees aren't considered Brown Act bodies, so.
Standing
we have-
committees are Brown Act bodies.
Yes.
Correct.
So
Ad
just
hoc committees
ethics and sexual harassment are all the way
are an
to the table
exception
now.
to some of the
That's
Brown
right.
Act.
Both on
They're
target
not,
safety,
yes.
right? Ah, forget those.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
So we're to the next one.
Okay, we're on to the next item here. Emergency preparedness already reported.
We've done
Okay, Finance Committee, Chuck.
I'm not the chair, but I believe everything that we discussed was brought to this meeting here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Liaisons, Menlo Park, reps.
Meeting with one of the councilmen on the 24th. We'll see how that goes.
East Palo Alto, Chuck.
I'm meeting with the emergency group again this Saturday morning at 11. And, that continues to improve and get better, and I think they've got a structure, they've got heads, they've got command centers now. They've got a communication strategy that's really quite interesting, and I think at some point we might want them to make a presentation to the board, because one of the bugaboos, in my opinion, on all these silver dragons and so forth, is that the communications never worked. These radios, these FRS radios were, in my opinion, worthless. I mean, you couldn't get them to work for more than a block. And, but they've got this strategy now for merging, for having a few people have the GMRS radios that are longer range, that can communicate with the FRS. In fact, they're the same piece of equipment, just a high power versus low power version. And then married with the amateur radio as being the next level. And one of the benefits that East Palo Alto group has is they've got that new antenna on Station 2, and that's allowing them to do stuff that they haven't been able to do before. And then somebody came up with a great idea that they were going to try to get permission from the Four Seasons, that in an emergency they're going to stand on the roof of the Four Seasons, and they should be able to get all the way up to San Francisco with their little handheld radios. So they've actually, I mean, they thought it out, and they just found a way. They found a way to solve this, and I think it's something that other CERT units in the district could benefit from.
That's exciting, they must be excited too, so good, oh, great job.
Atherton, Peter's not here. San Mateo County, Virginia.
Nothing to report right now.
Great. Public comment number 3. Do we have, is anyone? Looks like no one. All right.
I'll move here.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.